Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Ballers podcast. I'm Evan Ash, joined as always by Corey Puffett and Eric Meyer. Got a lot of stuff for you today on the show. Just a bit of housekeeping. We are going to take next week off, so we are going on a little break, just like basically all the shows on ESPN, and like Ross and Rachel, we're going on a break for a little bit, and we'll be back Monday, July 12th. So happy Independence Day to everybody out there.
I think we've earned a week off. I mean, it's been about almost 60 episodes since we last took a week off. It's a long time. May 2020. It's been more than a year of a show every single week.
Yeah, and we fight tooth and nail not to take weeks off. So
we do.
We do everything we can to make the schedules line up. This isn't a planned, let's just take a vacation. It's just a matter of we couldn't all get to the same spot or to the computer or whatever at a set time to the point where it wouldn't be worth it to do a show because we wouldn't be able to get together until Friday of next week, at which point we're doing another show in 3 days. So
yeah, so this is not us saying, we've reached episode 150, so we're done. This is it. We're just going to call it quits. This is not that.
No, we'll be back. We're coming back for season 4 here shortly. So
yeah, end of
like
next
a month or
I think. So. Yeah, end of next month be the start of season or year 4, season 4,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, season 4. So let's get into it. Let's see. We'll start in the NBA. I think that's the most pertinent thing, unless I've missed something. We've got quite a long list.
Everything we talk about here is pertinent, Evan. Come on.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just start in the NBA. I seem to have cursed the Hawks because I was watching some of their game last night, and they didn't score any points the whole time I was looking at it. So the Milwaukee Bucks are up 2-1 on the Hawks.
Did you only turn it on for like 30 seconds? Are we talking
I watched
45
the last,
seconds?
Like 2-ish minutes, maybe 3 minutes. And like Trae Young was out there. He almost never had the ball.
You said this was like the last few minutes of the game though, right?
Yes.
I mean, Trae Young was hurt at that point.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what caught my eye. I'm like, wait, why is he standing over there without the ball? He's the guy. And he didn't have the ball. So I'm like, something's wrong. And then I was looking on Twitter. He apparently stepped on the foot of an official and rolled his ankle.
Yeah.
How do you...
Yeah.
I hear players like, going up to the rim and coming down and stepping on a foot, sure. But where are you stepping on the foot of an official?
It was on the sideline. Young kind of stumbled backwards into the ref that was behind him, and he tweaked his ankle on the ref's foot.
That sucks.
He's been diagnosed with a bone bruise in his foot, and he's questionable for Game 5. So even if he plays, you got to figure he's going to be limited.
Yeah, those
bone
are no
bruises
fun.
are not easy to play through. That's not just tape it up and get your ass back out there.
No.
That's a tough injury to deal with. It wouldn't surprise me if he missed Game 5, and even like I said, even if he's out there, there's no way he's going to be 100%.
Game 4?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Game 4. I got a little ahead of myself.
Okay. Yeah, Game 4 is tomorrow night here in Atlanta. I'm not going. But,
Guess who might be there, though?
Dwight Howard, which apparently has drawn the ire of random blue checkmark Twitter people for some reason.
Apparently that's newsworthy.
There were a lot of celebrities at the game yesterday. Floyd Mayweather was there. It was a full crowd scene down there in Atlanta.
It's
for that
Atlanta.
game.
There's a lot of famous people down there. And they like sports.
It's also the Eastern Conference Finals. It's their first time hosting a game there since 2015, and they had some hopes because they weren't in the midst of getting swept.
Yeah.
So they felt pretty good. There was 1-1, and they jumped out to an early lead. They were up 15-2, I believe, early on in the game. Trae Young was lighting it up, and the Bucks couldn't get out of their own way offensively. But of course, the Bucks figured things out eventually. And the Bucks are the better team. We've talked about this the last week or so.
Sounds like that Mavericks Clippers game a month ago where Doncic just couldn't miss early, and then it just all fell apart.
Yeah, I mean that was. It wasn't nearly as dire as that because the Mavericks were up 2-0 at home, whereas the Bucks had thoroughly beaten the brakes off of the Hawks in Game 2. So you kind of figured, okay, they're up 15-2, but the Bucks are going to come back. Whereas the Clippers look like they might just be dead in the water, and then they resurrected themselves in the middle of that Game 3 when we were down in Southern Maryland. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm concerned about the Hawks' viability at this point. I didn't think they had much of a shot to win this series. They were 4.5-point underdogs at home in Game 3. I can't imagine that line's going to be more favorable with a hobbled Trae Young going into Game 4. And then they'd have to win at least one more in Milwaukee in order to have a chance to win this series. That's assuming that they take care of home court advantage. It's just the odds are against them. They're injured. They're not as good as the Bucks anyway. It feels like they've made a great run, but the Bucks are going to get through the NBA Finals. It's just the vibe I get at this point. It seems like the Hawks pulled the big surprise upset in Game 1. Trae Young went off. He scored 48 points. He was incredible. And it feels like it's just one of those things where one great player going up against a team that's significantly better than them, you could snatch one or two games, but at this point I think they've tapped out.
Is it like Allen Iverson in the, I believe, 2001 finals against those Lakers?
Yes, you could compare it to that because it's similar in the way that Iverson scored 48 in that game, sent it to overtime and won it at the Staples Center. That was the famous or infamous, from your perspective, the stepped over Ty Lue game. But the only reason that was really possible is because Kobe had a bad game shooting from the field. And so that was sort of like that for Chris Middleton. He didn't play well in Game 1, whereas if Kobe had played well in Game 1 in that series, they probably would have won that game despite Iverson going off. And same thing would have happened for the Bucks and the Hawks in this series. If Middleton had played well in Game 1, that 48 points by Trae Young would have looked really nice on the stat sheet, and we would have been able to talk about how great he is, but likely would have resulted in a disappointing loss for the Hawks.
Okay. Do we have anything else to add in the Eastern Conference Finals before I jinx the Hawks further by watching them play?
Yeah, I guess just another note, Mike Budenholzer might be saving his job, which might be to the dread of Bucks fans, especially if they're unable to get to the finals and win it, given the fact that he's still not doing a good job as a coach. Like, this has just continually been a train wreck of a postseason for him, but he keeps winning because everybody on the other side keeps getting hurt.
Roger Sherman tweeted that Mike Budenholzer looks like a guy who bet an amount of money he can't afford to lose on a casino game he doesn't fully understand.
Yes, that was quite a tweet, and it's true, though, because that's the way he looks on the sidelines, and it's also kind of how he coaches. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's the stakes have been raised. Obviously, this is the playoffs. There's no time to be messing around and not being able to know what the hell you're doing, but that's how he coaches. So hopefully he figures
he's
it
not
out,
doing
but,
anything.
I wouldn't have high expectations.
So I was on my brief commute home. I was listening to the sports talk station, and the guy on there was talking about how the Hawks should turn to your boy Red Velvet to carry the team because of Trae Young's injury.
I mean, I love Red Velvet, and he was excellent in Game 1. He's had some great moments in this series. He was great in Game 7 last week against the Sixers, and was the reason why, really, that they got this far. But he's not going to be able to go out there and lead a team past the Bucks in the conference finals. He's just not at that level of a player. Trae Young is the only guy on the Hawks that's at that level where you can say, okay, put us on your back and carry us to some victories. Herder's a nice role player. I'm glad he's having success. I'm glad he's improving. I'm glad he's getting a little bit of shine in these playoffs, but asking him to go out there and be Trae Young is just too much to expect from him.
Okay. All right, well, let's head out west. The Phoenix Suns have taken a commanding 3-1 lead over the Los Angeles Clippers. Apparently got an ugly win in Game 4. This is a big WW in my scorebook. I didn't see any of this. When was this game? I have no idea.
Was it on Saturday night? Yeah, Saturday night.
What was I doing?
I don't know.
I don't even know.
I know what I was doing.
Apparently not watching basketball.
You were. It was WW. You were not watching, so.
Yeah, I think I was watching baseball or something.
Always a
YouTube.
decent substitute. You can watch baseball.
Yeah.
That's cool. No complaints there. But yeah, it was a really poorly played game by both teams. I know the instinct is to say it was a defensive struggle. That doesn't really exist with these two teams. You can't sit there and say, wow, the Clippers really locked down the Suns and vice versa. No, it's just they played poorly. And particularly the stars of each team, Paul George didn't have a great game. He missed 2 more clutch free throws in this one.
I did see that.
Yeah. And it resulted in a Boogie Cousins offensive rebound where he got fouled on it. So it was basically no harm, no foul because they just got to go right back to the free throw line. Boogie makes the first one.
No harm, but there was a foul.
Thank you, Corey, for yes, no harm and a foul. So Boogie goes to the line. They're down by 3 at this point. And so it's a situation where you want to consider missing the second free throw on purpose to maybe grab an offensive rebound. And Boogie decides he's going to throw the ball Carlton style at the basket and slam it off the backboard, which anybody who's remotely well-versed in NBA rules knows the free throw attempt has to hit the rim or else it's a violation and a turnover. Well, Boogie's ball did not hit the rim, so it was just a dead ball, out of bounds Phoenix ball, so it was just a useless attempt. But Chris Paul missed a key free throw too to kind of keep the Clippers alive for a little bit longer than they should have been. Chris Paul missed 2 mid-range jumpers that we're accustomed to seeing him make down the stretch that would have iced the game. I mentioned Paul George clanking 2 free throws again. I guess it was before our last show, the Game 2 win with the DeAndre Ayton alley-oop. But Paul George missed 2 free throws to set that up because had he made even one of those, then they run that play, it's a tie game, it goes to overtime. You'll take that over just outright losing. And I think that I'm not going to sit here and get on Paul George about, playoff P strikes again because he's had enough moments in this playoff to just be like, okay, he has stepped up at the times that they needed. I mean, he's the reason why they're here.
But still, playoff P strikes again.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can go there if you want. But I also I give this Clippers team a lot of credit because I've said in the past, I make no bones about it. I don't like this Clippers team. I root against them in general. The only players on the team that I really like are Kawhi, and I don't really like Kawhi. I'm neutral on Kawhi because how can anybody really like or hate Kawhi? He's a robot. He has no personality. He just goes out there and plays basketball and looks emotionless all the time. So, I mean, I just have no feelings one way or the other towards Kawhi Leonard. But Paul George does get on my nerves with some of his chest beating and stuff like that. And the rest of the Clippers just irritate me. And the organization bothers me. And I don't care for Steve Ballmer's ridiculous antics sitting there behind the basket, pumping his fists like a nut. But at the same time, this Clippers team has been resilient. And they've played their asses off to get here despite the injuries, despite constantly falling behind in these series. That being said, I think this was like their 17th playoff game they played in 36 nights. That's brutal because these are high-intensity games. There's no nights off where you cruise. You're out there playing balls to the walls, high-intensity basketball every other night. Every other team that's in the playoffs right now has had some level of rest. The Bucks swept the Heat. That gave them effectively a week off.
Yeah.
The Suns swept the Nuggets. That gave them basically a week off going into this series. So, and the Hawks had a tougher time with the Sixers, but they got past the Knicks in 5 games. Yeah, so they had a quick series as well. So the Clippers are the only team out here that's just like every night or every other night they're having to play because every series is going the distance or close to it, while the other team's just sitting waiting for them. And like I said, lose Kawhi Leonard, it just seems like they're out of gas. And it's unfortunate for them because, like I said, they deserve credit for really competing, but it just seems like the time's come. They could have stolen this game in Game 4. They beat the hell out of the Suns in Game 3. They probably should have won Game 2 if not for the ridiculous play at the end. And yet, here they are. They're down 3-1. It just doesn't seem like they're going to be able to pull it off again.
I did see a clip of the Clippers made a big play and Mike Breen was yelling, and then the camera showed Kawhi Leonard up in the box, and he was just stoic as ever. Mike Breen made a sarcastic comment about it. Kawhi looks thrilled or something like that.
Yeah, it's like Staples Center's on their feet as the Clippers cut to 6. Kawhi Leonard going crazy as he was doing everything but going crazy. But yes, Mike Breen is a legend and a national treasure. And thank you, Mike Breen, for the excellent commentary.
Alrighty, so also in the NBA, there's been some coaches fired and some coaches hired to replace them. So Rick Carlisle, who was the coach of the Mavericks like last week, is now the coach of the Indiana Pacers. So Carlisle had been the coach of the Mavericks for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, same.
I have no idea
I don't
who the
remember
coach
who
was before him.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
Avery Johnson was the head coach when they made the finals the first time and lost to the Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade's Miami.
Really?
Heat. Yeah.
That was what, 06?
06 was that. It was the summer of 06 that the Heat won that series. I don't recall if Johnson was brought back. I think he was brought back the year after that. The Mavericks were the number 1 seed and lost to the We Believe Warriors as the 8 seed, which was a huge deal because 1-8 upsets just simply don't happen in the NBA playoffs, especially now that they've moved the first round to a 7-game format. And I think that's what ultimately led to Avery Johnson being dismissed. And I think Rick Carlisle took over after that. I would assume so because he was coaching the Mavericks when they won their championship a few years later. So I can't imagine there was another coach in between Avery Johnson and Rick Carlisle. But yeah, he was there for a good long while. He'd established himself as one of the best coaches in the league. He was a champion. He had pedigree. The players liked him. It just didn't seem like he would ever leave Dallas, especially with Luka Doncic being on the come up and the team looking like they're going to be heading in a positive direction with a young superstar. But it seems like maybe there was some locker room friction. Luka didn't seem to see eye to eye with Rick Carlisle on some things. And of course, when the star player doesn't agree with the coach is going to lose out 9 times out of 10. So I think it was it was quoted as a mutual parting of ways, which is, of course, is always nonsense. But at the same time, this doesn't feel like Rick Carlisle was fired. It felt like Rick Carlisle maybe said to Mark Cuban, I'm going to go now. Which I don't think Cuban was sitting there saying, oh, God, I got to get Rick Carlisle out of the building. He probably wanted him to stay.
Yeah, because, you bring up the point of when your star player has friction with a coach, generally speaking, you kind of feel like you need to, lean in the direction of their star player because they're the ones who are actually on the court, doing things, getting you the points that you need, the assists that you need, the rebounds you need to be competitive and win games. At the same time, when that star player is as young as Luka is, there has to be the question of how much of that is Luka knows what he's talking about and he has a right and a reason to be upset, and how much of that is immaturity on the part of a really young, inexperienced player at that level. If it's a guy like LeBron or in the NFL like Aaron Rodgers, yeah, you should probably go with your star player.
Yeah. And I should be clear, though, this isn't strictly just a Luka versus Rick Carlisle thing. Apparently, there's all kinds of inner workings with the front office. I believe a team president got dismissed by the Mavericks as well, and there was some hullabaloo about that. It just seems like there's a big shakeup going on in Dallas. And frankly, part of it definitely has to connect to the fact that, frankly, the Mavericks haven't won a playoff series since they won their championship back in 2011. It's been 10 years.
Any playoff series?
Yeah, they are 0 forever in their playoff series in the last 10 seasons. So,
wow.
The
Wizards have won a playoff series.
Wizards have won multiple playoff series since then. So,
that's bad.
Yeah, that's sort of the unspoken secret about the Mavericks a little bit, is the fact that they really have been a mediocre franchise since they won that title. Now, you could get away with that for a few years because you got Dirk Nowitzki on the downside of his career, and you just have to ride that out until he decides to hang it up, and then you rebuild from there. But the fact that it's still taken forever, Dirk has been effectively off the Mavericks for 5 years now. He might have still been on the bench, but he was basically a non-factor, and it kind of speaks a little bit to Mark Cuban's inability, seemingly, to recruit free agents. Remember the DeAndre Jordan situation, how that played out, where, supposedly, according to Chris Broussard, Cuban was supposedly driving all around the Dallas-Fort Worth area looking for DeAndre Jordan's address to go to his house, which was probably nonsense. But still, just the fact that those are the headlines you were reading about the Mavericks instead of Mavericks get to the second round is a little bit concerning, and it just seemed like they needed a little bit of an organizational shakeup, and Rick Carlisle seemingly got caught in the crossfire.
I just remember when the Mavericks won the championship, how Mark Cuban tweeted how he was laying in bed and he's got the trophy in the bed next to him, and he was like, "Is this weird?" Yeah, it's weird, but you know what? You won the championship.
Yeah, you have the trophy.
And you're the owner of the team. You can
Is it any
sleep with the
weirder
trophy if you
than
want.
Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski tossing the Lombardi Trophy across two boats over the water?
Or any
While
weirder
they're both
than
drunk out of their minds.
Yeah, or any weirder than the entire Capitals team drunkenly parading around DC with the Stanley Cup and taking keg stands out of it.
Right.
I mean,
all summer long.
It was
when
wonderful.
you win the championship, you kind of get to do with the trophy as you wish.
It should also be noted that Alex Ovechkin also slept with the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual for players to do, or I guess in this case, an owner to do that.
The real question, though, is how does this fit for the Pacers?
Well, Rick Carlisle's a really good coach, so it helps them for sure. They've got a good but not great team. They don't really have a championship foundation, but they've got a decent core of vets. They've got Domantas Sabonis as an all-star. They've got Karis LeVert, who they traded with the Nets for. He was a part of the 3-team deal for the Harden trade. He's a good young player. They've got Miles Turner, although he's been rumored to be on the trading block. He's a piece that's going to get mentioned a lot in the offseason as a guy that teams might be interested in as a big man, as a stretch big man who can shoot outside. But it's a decent enough team, and Rick Carlisle is a very good coach. And the issue with the Pacers is they fired Nate McMillan, who's currently coaching the Hawks, on kind of an interim basis because the Hawks fired their coach in the middle of the season when they were like 15-25 or something like that. I don't remember exactly what their record was, but it was bad. And now they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. And so they replaced Nate McMillan with, I'm not even going to bother to pronounce his name, it's a Scandinavian guy who, it was sort of almost like an NFL equivalent of Sean McVay, somebody sniffing his jockstrap and getting a job, like we've seen happen, where this guy worked in the G League under Nick Nurse, or with Nick Nurse at one point, who now coaches the Raptors and is one of the best coaches in the league. So everybody's saying, oh, hey, anybody that associates with Nick Nurse must be awesome. So they hired this guy. The players hated him. He got fired after 1 year. I could have named him Coach of the Year, and he would have been fired appropriately, just like Stan Van Gundy and Freddie Kitchens and Scott Brooks. And I don't know what the hell the Pacers were thinking with that move, and it didn't work out for them. So now they've got somebody that there's no doubt Rick Carlisle can handle the job. There's no mystery here. Rick Carlisle's probably going to the Hall of Fame one day. I don't think that it's ever a bad hire to bring Rick Carlisle in. I think he fits with just about any team imaginable.
Okay. So Rick Carlisle's old team hired Jason Kidd to replace him. Is Jason Kidd a good coach? Didn't he get fired from Milwaukee and fired from the Nets as well? Which team was he coaching when he told somebody to walk into him while he was holding a cup of water so he could get a free timeout when the water spilled on the floor?
I want to say he was with the Nets when he pulled that trick.
I think he was.
But yes, and I've mentioned this before. A lot of people blame Jason Kidd during his tenure with the Bucks for sort of breaking Giannis Antetokounmpo's jump shot because supposedly Kidd helped him work on it, and it got a lot worse. So now, obviously,
not to mention, how do you get fired by the team, by the Nets, who you were so good for so many years?
It's always the tricky part of hiring a guy who's a fan favorite from that team because it's really hard to fire him. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you should hold on to you if you suck at your job.
Well, right, and that's the whole thing is like somebody like that, you're generally going to give a little bit more string, a little more leniency to them, a little more rope.
Yeah.
And they still had to fire him because
didn't work.
just
Like
wasn't
your
working.
boy Cliff Kingsbury at Texas Tech.
Yeah, he was an alum and he got fired. It's a bad look. Then again, I can't say much because the Terrapins fired Ralph Friedgen, who actually was a good coach, and he was an alum, and they hired Randy Edsel instead. But let's not open those old wounds. That's just heinous. But I think that this is I've never been a fan of Jason Kidd as a head coaching option. I think he's had 2 tenures that didn't end well. I think he gets a lot of opportunities, probably rightfully so, because he's a former NBA point guard, and point guards are always going to be the guys that get opportunities because people say, okay, it's like a quarterback for an NFL team. Those are the guys that people think can see the field and understand the game really well and can strategize, but Kidd hasn't shown the ability to be a part of the developmental process of young talent, which is what set him back in Milwaukee. I mean, it's a big reason why he's no longer there. They hired Mike Budenholzer, who's as big of a bust as there is in the playoffs in recent history, to replace him, and Budenholzer's holding down the job longer than Kidd did, so it's definitely alarming. I think that if he has a good rapport with Luka, it can work. If he's learned from some mistakes, it could work. But I just think that this is going down for strike 3 here. I just don't believe in this as a viable option.
Literally all I know about Jason Kidd, the coach, is the spilling the water thing. That's it.
Don't let him help Luka with his jump shot, please.
Luka's jump shot is pretty good as it is. It can be better, but you don't have to break it entirely. Like, this isn't a Ben Simmons situation where you
Good
just
Lord.
have to transform it and tell him to shoot with his other hand, literally, in order to make it an effective jump shot. Luka's pretty good. Let Luka be Luka.
Okay. Apparently, Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis hate each other. I saw that on Twitter today. Apparently, there's beef between the two of them about how Porzingis is just big and gangly and
Eric
sucks.
hates Kristaps Porzingis.
Well, I don't hate him. I just don't think he's very good. I mean,
That's what I
The
mean.
unicorn.
yeah. The
Generally
unicorn.
speaking, when we talk about hating a player, we're not really talking about hating them
Yeah, like
personally.
personally, there are
There are some,
there are some players where I do really dislike them personally. I'm not gonna say I hate them.
but generally
because I don't
speaking, when
really
we
hate
talk about
anybody.
that, we're talking like they're not good at what they're paid to do.
Yeah, like Kristaps Porzingis is overrated. I think he got overrated when he was with the Knicks partially because, okay, his initial draft selection was heavily panned. Stephen A. Smith had one of his most famous rants about it on First Take, where he came in on his vacation to tell everybody about it, and then he ended up being a pretty good player for them. A 7'3" dude who could hit threes and stuff, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, this guy's awesome. He's the unicorn." Well, part of that is because he got caught up being a Knick. It's sort of the same thing again. A football equivalent
Jeremy
of being
Lin,
somebody
right?
who's on the Dallas Cowboys, who shows some promise. He's the next best thing ever. That's always how it's been. It's always how it's worked. And with Kristaps Porzingis, that was the case then. But even back then, you could say, "Oh, he's 7'3" and he plays no defense. I need my tall people to play defense. That's why they're out there. That's the benefit of being tall. The big detriment of being short is you can't defend tall people. When you're taller than everybody, you should be able to defend most people. So, and the fact that he's ineffectual at that speaks to some severe value being lost, especially given how big and tall he is. He should be better at that. And I just think, you hate to throw the word around without being 100% sure, so I made sure I was 100% sure when I say this. He's a little soft. He doesn't have really that grit. He's not willing to go inside and post up on people. I mean, again, he's 7'3". The benefit of being tall is being able to put your back to somebody and go score on them in the paint, at least sometimes. He has shown no ability nor any desire to do that. So as a result, he's relegated to being the 7'3" guy that stands in the corner and waits for Luka to kick the ball out to him. He doesn't like it because he thinks he's better than that, and Luka doesn't like that because he thinks he should be better than that.
Okay. I remember Porzingis getting drafted was one of the first topics I talked about on the Ash Backwards podcast that first year. It's how he was so vociferously booed by the Knicks fans. They already knew this guy can't play. Yeah. Turns out he was good and then bad for them. So anyway, Chauncey Billups is now the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers.
We're at that point in our lives where like players I remember watching as a kid are now becoming head coaches for all these teams.
Like Tyronn Lue was on the Wizards for a long time.
Yeah.
See, I don't really remember Tyronn Lue being on the Wizards, but like I remember watching Steve Nash. I remember watching Jason Kidd back in the day. I remember watching Chauncey Billups.
Well, because those guys were all stars, where Tyronn Lue was a role player. You know, you're not likely to remember Tyronn Lue as well as all those other guys. But this
was Tyronn Lue a teammate of JaVale McGee?
No, he was gone
Wizards.
by then. He was long gone by then. But this Billups hire, unfortunately, has come with some things that I didn't know about, and that's sort of on me for not being aware of some allegations or an allegation against him from 1997 where he was very credibly accused of raping a woman, and supposedly it was settled out of court, no charges were filed. But Billups has seemingly just kind of flown under the radar with that being on his resume.
I didn't know about that until I saw you put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, he was a player. He was an all-star. He was an finals MVP. With that on his resume, he became a TV guy. He was on ESPN for a good while. He has gotten involved in the coaching circles. He was an assistant to Ty Lue this year with the Clippers. Now he's taking a head coaching job. It all looked like, okay, this is how it's supposed to progress for a smart point guard. Again, we just talked about, who recently left the NBA, ascending to a head coaching rank. And then you see this, and it's just like, it kind of ruins it all. Yeah. It takes away from the stuff that we kind of like to see. We like to see good players, particularly black players, getting opportunities as coaches going forward. Same thing with Jason Kidd. You know, it's like, regardless of the fact that I don't think he's that good of a coach, I'm still happy that Kidd and people like Jason Kidd are getting opportunities. But with this, it's just, how do you rectify this? And why has this not been a bigger issue? That's really the big thing for me. It's like, it's hard to get mad at the Portland Trailblazers specifically when everybody else didn't care either. The Clippers seemingly didn't care. ESPN didn't care.
And a lot of us didn't even know.
Most of us didn't even know. And I'm just looking at this and I'm like, okay, do we just let this slide? If that's the case, then, you know, I don't like it, but if that's how it is, I can't change it. I can't get on the horn and say, hey, don't hire Chauncey Billups as a head coach because he's an accused rapist. I don't have that kind of power, but it also was frustrating, and I understand why, particularly Portland Trailblazers fans, particularly women who are sports fans, who see Becky Hammon's name come up as a candidate, a legitimate candidate for head coaching. Now, people who don't know who she is, she's an assistant on the Spurs, and when Greg Popovich got kicked out of a game, she became the first woman to effectively be the head coach of a team because she took over as the head coach when
I do remember that,
when Popovich was handed his walking papers for the night for being Greg Popovich. But you know, she is a well-respected head coaching candidate in NBA circles, and she was supposedly given serious consideration for this job. And then they go with Chauncey Billups, who, again, as far as coaching credentials go, seems legit. But when you consider this other thing, this personal thing, and then you roll that in with the Becky Hammon thing, it's like you went from excellent to the worst thing imaginable. And I don't know what they're going to do about it. I don't know if the outcry is enough for them to walk it back and not hire Chauncey Billups. And I don't know how Damian Lillard feels about this. I mean, he's a big part of this as well, given the fact that he's a superstar who's clearly not happy with the things in Portland right now because of the fact that they can't contend for championships despite having him. I don't know how this is going to play out, but it seems like the Trailblazers really stepped in it with this when it was totally avoidable.
Yeah. Then the last coach, Ime Udoka to the Celtics. What's the deal with this? And Jay Williams is involved somehow.
Well, not really involved, but Jay Williams
inserted himself.
Jay Williams tweeted about it. I mean, as commentators do, you tweet about these things. But he tweeted that Ime Udoka is the first black head coach for the Boston Celtics, which is not true. He's not the first. He's not the second. He's not the third. He's not even the fourth black head coach that they have had.
And the thing is, it's not like the four guys before him, none of them were notable. 3 of them won championships coaching the Boston Celtics. So I don't really know what the hell Chauncey was doing, especially or not Chauncey,
Jay Williams.
Jay Williams. I don't know what the hell he was talking about Because especially given the fact that Doc Rivers' entire legacy, the reason why Doc Rivers is such a respected coach around the league is because of what he did with the Boston Celtics.
Now, I'd imagine that we do have to say that Jay Williams came back and said, I was hacked, but who is hacking your account to say that Ime Udoka is the first black head coach in Boston Celtics history? Who exactly is hacking your account specifically just to say that? It's a weird thing to hack somebody's account for.
A very subtle piece of humor there, I guess, that nobody would really care about. If I had access to a high-profile individual's Twitter, I might do something a little more incendiary than that.
I really enjoyed the clip you sent of, was it Jaylen Rose, who kind of clowned him a little bit for that?
Yeah, well, because Jay Williams was being a little bit smug in the moment because he's talking about how the Bucks need to stop running drop coverage on Trae Young because yada, 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 basketball, terminology that Evan would hate me for spending a bunch of time on. And so
stretch 4 on the elbow.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
That guy.
The point is, Jay Williams was seemingly spiking the football a little bit about being right about everything and doing an "I told you so" on Jaylen Rose, and Jaylen just says, "Well, I was hacked," just kind of like clapping back. And just in a moment like that, it's one thing to roast people, like Chuck and Shaq roast each other all the time, and Kenny and Chuck, and Kenny and Charles, and even Ernie gets it on the act. Like, their roasting always seems like it's in good fun. This seems like there was a little bit of
animosity.
I kind of don't like you as a shot there, especially given their history when Jay Williams didn't go to Duke at the same time Jalen Rose went to Michigan, but in the Fab Five, it was notable that Jalen Rose said that he and his cohorts at Michigan saw black players that went to Duke and played for Duke as Uncle Toms. And, well, Jay Williams was a black player that went to Duke, and to quote Michael Jordan, he took that personally, and probably fairly so. I mean, he should take that personally, but so there's a little bit of history there where these guys have not always seen eye to eye. But Jay Williams is just he's in the news too much for a middling ESPN analyst. Like, he's not special. He's not Charles Barkley, where Charles Barkley says crap all the time and it makes headlines because Charles is an entertainer. Jay Williams isn't an entertainer. He's just a guy on TV.
He's a talking head.
Yeah, who just keeps stepping in the mud with Kevin Durant speaking for him regarding Giannis and never compare me to Giannis and stuff like that. And now he's doing this. I don't know what the hell's going on with Jay. He needs to get it together.
But anyway, Ime Udoka.
Yeah, okay. The actual guy that got hired, he was
Yes.
he was an assistant coach with the Brooklyn Nets. He was a pretty well-regarded candidate as well. And again, the Celtics could really use somebody like that. They've got 2 young all-stars. They're trying to figure out how to reshape and remold this team to get them back to contention, given the fact that Danny Ainge did have his share of missteps and is a big part of the reason why they're no longer seen as a contender despite all the draft picks and all the young talent they had.
I'm assuming the 2 all-stars you're referring to are Jason Tatum and Brandon Hayward?
Jaylen Brown. And
Gordon Hayward is what I'm thinking of.
Hayward plays for the Charlotte Hornets now.
Oh, okay. He was with the Celtics,
Yes,
though,
he
wasn't
was, and then he left for the Hornets.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, the 2 all-stars
Brendan Haywood played for the
Wizards.
Yes.
And now he's currently an analyst on NBA TV.
Yes.
Yes, I like Brendan Haywood. But anyway, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum.
Got it.
Both guys, I think Tatum is 23. Brown, he might have just turned 25. So yes, young stars. 2 guys that anybody would kill to have on their team. They just need one more guy, it seems. But they need somebody who's the guy, and that's hard to come by. Like, most teams aren't just going to trade away one of the 6 or 7 best players in the NBA. Unless Damian Lillard comes down to town, which maybe could be in the works. Who knows? We'll probably see more of that in the offseason. But this is a good hire for Boston. I think that Udoka is going to do a good job. I think he's going to connect well with the players, which is what matters. And, of course, the Nets hired a pretty cerebral crew of guys to help behind Steve Nash, who was a rookie head coach. They had Mike D'Antoni on the staff, who was probably going to the Hall of Fame. They had Udoka on the staff. So I think he's going to be in a good position. He's been under the tutelage of a lot of really good coaches and has probably helped a lot of good coaches become great coaches.
Okay. All I remember of Brendan Haywood was he was in an Eastern Motors commercial. That's coming to mind right now. All right, on to the NBA draft lottery. The Detroit Pistons win the Crash for Cade sweepstakes. So congratulations to them.
Or Fade for Cade if you prefer that. It's your choice.
I like rhyming better with those.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like suck for luck.
Yeah, but that's so much better. Like, that fits so well.
It does.
Cade was a little... Fade for Cade was probably the best, but even that's not that great.
No.
I mean, the Colts, that year, I think 2011,
yes,
I want to say, they were so awful. They couldn't do anything right. So, they really sucked for luck. Did the Pistons really suck bad enough to deserve the number 1 pick? I can't see I've seen a single bounce of Pistons basketball in like 3 years, at least.
I mean, they weren't the worst team in the NBA, if that's what you mean, but they were pretty awful. I mean, I think they were in the top 3, because I've mentioned this before, but as a refresher, the NBA has changed their lottery policy where the 3 worst records all have the same odds to get the number 1 pick at like 14% or something like that. And the Pistons were in that top 3, so they certainly didn't get, their luck wasn't unprecedented or surprising in this case. They had just as good or better odds than anybody else to get the top pick.
And that still leaves like a 58% chance that it's going to be somebody from outside of the top 3, if my math is right there. So, I mean, but that's the whole point of it. You talked about this last week. That's the whole point of them changing the policy there, is to keep people from tanking, expecting that it's going to result in a great lottery pick.
Yeah, and it's also good for situations like I mentioned in the show notes. Oklahoma City had probably the most shameless display of tanking possible. They had Al Horford on their team, who is a very good veteran player. They had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is an up-and-coming all-star point guard. They had Lou Dort, who became famous in the bubble last year, but he's still had a good year this year as well. They had talent on the team. It wasn't like they had to go out there and lose all these games. They just decided at some point to say, why not? Let's just not play our best players. It was pure insanity what they pulled. Where, like, normally it's just like, okay, tanking teams just get rid of their good players and put crap on the court. These guys had them, and they just didn't play them.
But it paid off for them, right?
No, it did not. What a twist. They ended up falling to the number 6 pick. I mean, this is the team that I think they won 1 game in their last, like, 22 or something like that. And
that is Orioles-esque.
And the one win was against the Clippers, who were trying to lose. And they barely lost. So,
That's specifically Chris Davis-esque.
It was heinous. Anytime you saw the Thunder on the schedule, okay, chalk that up as a win, because they're going to try to give you the victory.
That poor one team that did lose down the stretch to them.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was the Clippers, and
the Clippers were losing on purpose.
Yeah, the last team to lose to them while trying to win was the Celtics, which is a big part of the reason why they said, all right, well, we got to reshuffle the deck here. This is unacceptable. But, I mean, they fall to number 6, and the worst part for them is this is considered a pretty deep draft, but in terms of top-level talent, it's considered a 4 or 5 player draft, and they're at 6. So they're not getting anybody that's going to be franchise-altering with the 6th pick, despite their best efforts to just be disgracefully bad, which I think that means that in this case it worked out for the better, because this is a particularly deep draft. Most years falling to 6 would be doomsday, but most years falling to 4 would be doomsday. You're typically not going to get more than 4 guys that are among guys you'd say, okay, this is a cornerstone player. But that's
after that, it's kind of luck of the draw. You pick somebody and you hope that they turn into something more than they've shown in the past.
Yeah, or just the ceiling is a role player or like a good starter or something like that for like a 6th or 7th pick.
Generally speaking, yeah.
But when you're as bad as the Thunder were, your hopes are a little higher. You want Cade Cunningham. That's who you wanted, and you didn't get him. So tough break for them. But I'm not feeling bad.
No,
not at all.
No, I don't feel bad for teams that tank.
Yeah, I think.
Shout out to my friend Richard, a Thunder fan, who I guess is going through some tough times. Maybe you should try watching the Orioles, because they don't win any games either.
Yeah, we'll get to them in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to them shortly. The Rockets got the.
Oh, Evan just froze.
Well, the Rockets got the number 2 pick.
Yes, they did.
I know that because I put it in the notes, and I actually watched the lottery play out. So they'll be looking at guys like Evan Mobley as an option as well. They're like I said, there are good players in the draft. There are great players or great prospects in the top 4 or so. So the Rockets will be able to take advantage of that. They also were they weren't, I don't look at them with the same disdain as the Thunder because, yes, they were terrible, but they were kind of terrible by force. Their star player said, I'm out of here, and they had to deal him. And at that point, it's like, okay, we got to go into rebuild mode because they didn't have a whole lot of draft capital either. So they said, okay, we just got to deal with it as it is. We'll play it out. We'll probably lose a whole bunch of games, and we'll go from there. So I respect the Rockets' path to tanking a lot more than I respect the Thunder. Not that I'm a fan of anybody tanking, but with the Rockets, I get it a lot more.
While we wait for Evan, he will hopefully be rejoining us momentarily. But let's go ahead and jump on to Golden State. Golden State, I don't know what this means by the pick conveys, but they got Minnesota's first-round pick plus their own first-round pick. So, again, these are outside of those first few picks, so you're not necessarily expecting a whole lot from it, but 2 opportunities in the first round does give you a better chance to find that diamond in the rough. So they get the 7th and the 14th picks in the first round.
Yeah, the meaning behind what's in the notes is when the Warriors had D'Angelo Russell on their team last year and they traded him to the Timberwolves for Andrew Wiggins and their first-round pick for the 2021 draft. But in the NBA, you can have a draft pick be protected for certain slots, meaning if the Timberwolves pick ended up being in the top 3, then the Wolves would have kept the pick and the Warriors would have taken the following year's draft pick from the Timberwolves. But since it fell at 7, the Warriors get the pick, which means it conveys, and so it's the Warriors' pick at this point. So the reason why this is significant is because, yes, like you said, Corey, 7 and 14, a lot of Warriors fans were getting greedy and hoping it would be 4 and 14 because they knew that their own pick was definitely not going to, unless they got super lucky and had to hit number 1, it wasn't going to be anywhere near the top 10 because they were the best of the non-playoff teams by far. And so but I mean, at the same time, first-round picks are still valuable, even if they're not going to get you a superstar. You can still package them to a team that's looking to rebuild to move off of a star or close to a star. A name that's been thrown around for the Warriors has been Pascal Siakam from the Toronto Raptors. Bradley Beal's been mentioned in trade talks, although I don't know how viable that really is for the Warriors and the Wizards to work out. There's plenty of other options, or not even necessarily stars, but just solid veterans to build around your core of Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green. And so they've got pieces now to maybe make a move and get themselves vaulted up the standings as maybe one of the contenders in the West next year if everything goes right. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on what they do because they don't really have interest in drafting a couple of 19 or 20-year-old kids and waiting 5 years for them to see if they turn out to be good players. They're trying to win now because they've got a superstar that's 33 years old. So they're not really in the business of let's draft a bunch of young kids and hopefully they can contribute, but probably not for another 3 or 4 years, and then we'll go from there. They're looking to move those for veterans.
Now, where Golden State was the first team out of the playoffs, so, the worst position in the lottery, the Wizards just barely missed being part of the lottery.
Yeah, because they made the playoffs. So it was so weird because I'm like looking for the Wizards, like where are they? That's right, they made the playoffs. I was like, they're not in the lottery this year. It's weird. The last few years, it's like, oh, we'll find the Wizards. I'm sure they won't have any luck. They never do with the lottery. They always get screwed, except for when they got John Wall. Of course, that was pretty fortunate. But since then, it's been 9th or 10th or 8th or something like that, and they usually don't make a good selection. So, but this year they don't have any choice. They'll be drafting 15th. So we'll see how that goes for them.
There you go. Still waiting on Evan. His computer crashed, so he's got to restart that. And but Scottie Pippen got some news this week to talk about with Scottie Pippen. He got into a Twitter spat with Kevin Durant, which, I mean, is refreshing to see Kevin Durant get into a Twitter spat with actual other people rather than just his own burner accounts. So there is that. He claimed that LeBron James won the 2016 NBA championship with no help, and he accused Phil Jackson of racism. So
among
it's
other things.
Other things. So it's been a busy week for Scottie Pippen. You want to talk about that a little bit, Eric?
Yeah, I guess we'll start from the beginning. Scottie Pippen appears on The Jump frequently, ESPN's mid-afternoon NBA show that Evan is super jealous of because he thinks that baseball should have a similar show 365 days a year, which they do not on ESPN anymore, but that's a different topic. But he was discussing specifically Kevin Durant and comparing him to LeBron James, which, of course, is how it works when you've got two great players, one of which is, I wouldn't say Kevin Durant's in his prime anymore, but a lot closer to it than LeBron James is, and he's certainly at the top or among the top players in the NBA. And so there was a comparison being made about how Kevin Durant couldn't get out of the East this year. He couldn't get past the Bucks, despite the fact that Harden got hurt, despite the fact that Kyrie Irving got hurt. And so there's a comparison going on saying, well, LeBron James could have taken that team. I'm like, you might be right. LeBron James might have been able to carry this Cavs team or somebody like that that's not as good as this Nets team past, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, you can't sit there and expect Kevin Durant to be as good as LeBron James. LeBron James is one of the greatest players ever. But it led to a back and forth where Scottie was claiming that Kevin Durant is primarily just a scorer. He's not a facilitator. He's not a playmaker. And beyond all of these seemingly personal vitriol towards KD that sort of came out here, Scottie's analysis wasn't completely wrong. It's not like KD is a playmaker. It's not like he goes out there and he's a pass-first guy at certain times. He is primarily a scorer who does lack some of the playmaking ability that LeBron has that allows him to carry the load for his entire team sometimes. That being said, LeBron James has always had help when he's won his championships. And Scottie claimed otherwise. He tried to say that LeBron won the 2016 title with Cleveland against the Warriors without any help, even though Kyrie Irving existed in that series and was great. Like, not only was Kyrie there, Kyrie played better than Kyrie normally plays. If Kyrie had played at his normal standard, which is very good and certainly worthy of being claimed as help, they lose that series in 5 games. But Kyrie went supernova the last 3 games of the series and was, basically, I won't say he's the main reason they won. LeBron clearly was the best player, but without him, they absolutely don't win. He was the second best player in that series, and that series included Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson. So that says a lot about what Kyrie did in that stretch. He absolutely should be clarified as help in that championship run, and it's insulting to say otherwise for Scottie. And, of course, KD came back at him and said something along the lines of, well, how about that time that you decided to sit out on a game-winning shot attempt because the ball wasn't going to you, as infamously documented in The Last Dance during the semifinals in 1994 when Phil Jackson drew up a play for Tony Kukoc to take the game-winning shot, and Pippen refused to go back in the game, and that was kind of glossed over in the documentary. Like, that should have been a huge sticking point for a lot of people. Like, wow, Scottie, that was pretty damn selfish, especially because Kukoc went on to make the shot.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, the bottom line is he made the shot. It worked.
Yeah, so that became a talking point when Pippen appeared on Dan Patrick's show today, and Pippen was just bizarre behavior from him, a guy who's been in the media for the last few years and has always been pretty measured, referring to himself in the third person the entire time, kept calling himself, he was like, Scottie Pippen did this, Scottie Pippen did that. I'm like,
what?
He's looking like Jimmy from Seinfeld, just like, I'm like, are you
later George?
Yeah,
I need to find this clip.
Yeah, it was
Wait,
it was bizarre to say the least. And among other things, he accused Michael Jordan of being selfish for going to play baseball, which, again, I don't want to get into the personal machinations of these two guys, but it's just a bizarre accusation to claim that Jordan gave up the limelight to go ride the bus for the Birmingham Barons, I believe, instead of being the biggest sports star in the world because he was selfish. It's just, again, I'm not going to sit here and act like Michael Jordan's a perfect person. He definitely had his share of flaws, as shown in The Last Dance and through other documentation. But it just seems bizarre that this is a talking point where you're like, this is what makes him a bad dude. This is like one of the most humbling things he ever did, was to go play baseball because his dad wanted him to play baseball after his dad passed away. I mean, I just, it was weird. And then it came down to a conversation regarding the play we just discussed, and that's when Scottie Pippen went, I'm not going to say he went totally off the rails, because frankly there is some justification for the claim, but claiming that the play was drawn up for Tony Kukoc because Kukoc was white and Phil Jackson was racist and didn't want to give Scottie his shine because Scottie was black, that's wild. Like, Phil Jackson's a former NBA player. Phil Jackson was a hippie in the 60s. Phil Jackson made his money and became acclaimed by coaching black men. What? Like, just saying that, oh, he drew up a certain play for this guy because he was white. How many plays did Phil Jackson draw up for Michael Jordan? Probably 95% of the plays he drew up were for Jordan. Tony Kukoc is a better shooter than Scottie Pippen. It makes sense for him to maybe get the ball for a game-winning shot attempt. And, and Scottie had beef. He said, like, this is my first opportunity as the main guy on the team. Why couldn't I get the ball once? Okay, I think that's a fair question. You're the best player on the team. You've been robbing for 7 or 8 years with Jordan. You're taking over the team. You've got them competing at a high level. I understand saying, okay, I want the ball in crunch time. That's not unfair. But when you make it a race issue, it's a little weird.
And also run the play, and if Kukoc misses the shot, then sure, go ballistic in the post-game press conference and be like, yeah, that's what happens when you don't give your best player the ball.
Sure.
And at that point, I'm fully okay with that. But
to not help the team,
play,
to not help the team win.
He made the shot, and for you to still harp on it after that, just be grateful that you guys won the game and the series continued.
If they had lost that game, Scottie's name would have been dragged in the media. I mean, this is obviously pre-social media, and it would have been restricted to newspaper articles, and maybe some TV conversation on SportsCenter. But I think that I know that Scottie's had a rough run of things lately. His son died this year obviously at a young age. His son passed away. And so, I try to be sympathetic and patient with some of these things, but that doesn't mean I'm going to let you just go on TV and say whatever you want without voicing my opinion about why I think you're off base. And in this case, most of these claims he's off base or just saying stuff that doesn't line up with reality. Now, again, like I mentioned a little bit, Phil Jackson has said some things in the past that have definitely twinged racial lines. There's no doubt. When he says in the late 90s that these kids these days basically don't pay attention because they're too busy listening to their hip-hop music, yeah, it's a little racist. It is. Like, what else do you call it? And then when David Stern institutes the player dress code policy to force the players to dress in suits on the sidelines instead of wearing casual clothes, which no longer exists, by the way, and Phil Jackson gives it a full-throated endorsement by saying the players are dressing like gangsters and thugs. Again, there's a lot of racial overtones to the language that he was using about black players in the NBA. So there is a track record, and it would not be fair for me to say Scottie Pippen has absolutely no basis to call Phil Jackson a racist. But I am going to say this specific instance that he's highlighting has nothing to do with racism. It has to do with drawing up a play to win. I don't think Phil Jackson would say, let me snub Scottie Pippen on a game-winning shot attempt, just because he's black. That doesn't add up.
Also, if you're a racist, you wouldn't choose basketball as your career. That just doesn't make sense.
So.
Well, Donald Sterling decided to buy an NBA team,
well,
so
there's that.
But
he doesn't necessarily have to interact with the players.
The team.
That's true. And like I said, Phil Jackson played in the NBA. Like it's a little hard to. It's kind of hard to be racist and play professional basketball, even in the 70s when it wasn't as dominated by African Americans like it is today. It still was. There was still a big black influence in the NBA at that time. So I think that, again, there's some sympathy here because Scottie's going through it, but at the same time, you gotta control what you say because you're going after people in somewhat of an unfair manner in a lot of cases, and you're opening yourself up to criticism, and that's what we do. We observe and we criticize when appropriate.
Yeah. All right, so after my tech hiatus, I'm back. Is that it for the NBA?
Yeah, I
We'll
think
move on
so.
to
Spent
baseball.
the first hour on that. Holy cow.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, so we got a long list of baseball stuff. We got, both teams that the guys on this show are fans of have sucked as of late. One of them, that's a surprise. One of them, it's not. So let's start with the Orioles.
Are either of them really a surprise at this point?
Nah, not really.
I mean,
Yankees have been.
Look at some Yankees fans on Twitter that have to be yanked back from the ledge. Like, oh, we lost games. That happens sometimes. You're going to lose games.
I mean, we're halfway through the season almost, and the Yankees are very much underachieving still. So I think
last week was a nice reprieve for us, but as I'm pretty sure I said, I fully expect for us to go back into losing.
You did.
Okay. Well, oh boy, we'll start with the Orioles. I'm hosting this week. We got the Orioles. So since our last show, the Orioles have won a total of one game. They beat the Blue Jays 6-5 on Friday.
Is that the third week in a row that you've been able to say that?
No, it's the second week in a row because 2 weeks ago they hadn't won any games.
That's right.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
So that happened. So that win on Friday was it ended the Orioles' 20-game road losing streak. So that happened. They hadn't won a game since
Diamondbacks territory there.
Yes, well, the Diamondbacks, they ended their streak as well. They beat the Padres, I believe, on Saturday.
Yeah, they unloaded some
10
rage
to
on
3
that
or something like
The
that.
one time I picked up a starting pitcher to start against the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, it was a disaster. Almost cost you the week.
It did.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so, good for the Diamondbacks for winning a game. Good for the Orioles for winning a game. The Orioles are playing in Houston tonight. I feel like the Orioles haven't won a game in Houston since shortly after the Astros joined the American League.
Yeah, even when the Orioles were competent, they struggled to win in Houston.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it is about playing in that barn, but the Orioles can't do it. So we'll just try to keep it mostly positive this week, despite the Orioles playing like crap all the time. Cedric Mullins has made it to Phase 2 of American League outfield voting. So the way they do the voting now is like you can vote for everybody for the first week or so, and then they'll take the top 3 at each position and the top 9 outfielders in the total votes, and it's sort of a second round to try to narrow it down to the top guys. So Cedric Mullins is one of the best players who's still eligible to be voted on. And he's
had a terrific season.
Mike Trout is injured as well. So that's Mike Trout's one of the top vote getters, but he's probably not going to play. He hasn't played in a month and a half at this point. He's been out for a while. So let's see. Also going on, Trey Mancini has accepted an invitation to participate in the Home Run Derby. I think that's really exciting.
That's cool for him.
The Home Run Derby has kind of become the marquee event compared to because All-Star Game can be so boring and there's so many commercials. But the Home Run Derby, especially...
like that, I'll tune into that. I might not tune in for the All-Star Game itself, but I'll tune in for the Home Run Derby more often than not.
Also, if there's someone in your life who's not really a baseball fan, but you want them to be a baseball fan, chain them to the couch and make them and peel their eyeballs open. Make sure they watch the Home Run Derby.
Maybe their eyelids, not their eyeballs themselves.
Oh, yeah, not their eyeballs, their eyelids. Yes, you know what I mean. So yeah, looking forward to that. It's in Colorado, so the ball's going to be flying. Mancini's going to join defending champion from 2019, Pete Alonso. There wasn't a home run derby in 2020. Colorado Rockies shortstop Trevor Story and Shohei Ohtani, who's a pitcher who's just smashing balls all over the place. He had an inside pitch for an opposite field home run, like a moonshot.
That's ridiculous.
The other day.
How do you do?
Yeah.
How? How do you do that?
Yeah. He's also the Angels' best pitcher.
Yeah, he is.
What is happening right now? It's crazy.
This dude is amazing.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
It's the funny thing is he's been in the league for this is his 4th season, and we heard about, this is the Japanese Babe Ruth, and we got a glimpse of it kinda. Now it's actually happening. It's here. This dude's gonna win the MVP, and he's gonna deserve the hell out of it because this is incredible.
Yeah, he could deserve the MVP as a pitcher or a hitter, but he's having an MVP season as both. It's incredible. So good for him. I went to an Angels game a couple years ago, and I got a Shohei Ohtani blanket. That was the giveaway that night.
Nice.
In the surprising freezing cold Southern California. So let's get into Orioles Twitter, which is a tinderbox most of the time anyway.
Well, they seem to love your guys' front office.
Well, Evan and I are both participants in Orioles Twitter, so
yeah,
we're a part of that tinderbox.
Yeah, because Orioles Twitter is very prone to blowing up when the slightest thing happens. So over the past, I guess, week or so, some louder people, have gotten kind of frustrated with the product on the major league field, which is fair because it's been atrocious. But this is what we signed up for. This is what a rebuilding team looks like. Okay, it's going to be painful, it's going to be bad, or it's going to be the butt of a lot of jokes, and they're going to deserve it. Okay, there's going to be memes and gifs and the like, but it's about building for the future. Okay, there's no point spending a whole bunch of money to try to put a competent major league team together when it's not going to work. Right? You could buy all these guys, but that'll get us to 70 wins? That's still not a championship team. So there were so many issues in the farm system, not having enough good players in it. The Orioles are paying the price for their foolish decisions and poor roster management from 2015 to 2018. The trades that they made and didn't make were dumb. They neglected the farm system for so long. They refused to invest in international free agents at all. The best players in the world coming to play Major League Baseball aren't necessarily from the United States, from the Dominican Republic, from Cuba, or from Venezuela. And there was nah, we don't want any of those guys on our team for whatever reason. They just weren't interested. So it takes years to turn all this stuff around. They've had to build the entire organization from scratch, basically. There's been one full baseball season since they took over. They took over after the 2018 season. So we had all of 2019. 2020 happened. So everything that you like in your life was basically canceled in 2020. Remember that thing that happened? And then 2021's we're only halfway through the minor league season. So it hasn't been enough time to attempt to run these people out of town. You have to be patient, and this is what it is. Okay, it's going to be frustrating and embarrassing. But just keep in mind that they're building for the future, and that Rome wasn't built in a day, or in 3 years, for that matter. So in my opinion, I think they've taken great strides to improve the farm system. The minor league teams, the single A and double A teams, are absolutely crushing everybody. Despite what you guys saw last week at the game you attended, it had a little bit of a setback. But yeah, it takes a little while. So if you are an Orioles fan, if you consider yourself an Orioles fan, do yourself a favor, and I've found a couple podcasts you need to listen to that dive in depth on how the Orioles rebuild is going, and they have everything you need to know. in case you're frustrated or having doubts about the direction of the franchise. So the Mass and All Access podcast, they posted an episode on June 16th about the rebuild. And then there's a podcast called Give That Fan a Podcast. His episode on June 15th was incredible. Ryan breaks it all down on there as well. And then you should watch the minor league games. An MILB.com subscription costs like $40 for the whole year. You can watch every minor league game, no matter where you are. There's no blackout restrictions or anything like that. And follow the minor league teams as they and the prospects as they grow to be major leaguers. That's all I can tell you. I'm having a hard time seeing the other side of this. I know the team's bad, but it's just bad. What do you want them to do? The guys who are playing are trying, despite them being bad at baseball. So after that, monologue. Eric, what do you think? What on the Orioles Twitter, melting down the past week or so?
I mean, on one hand, I understand why certain people are upset because it feels like, despite the fact that the organization has taken a bigger focus on international prospects, the fact that they've made great efforts to rebuild the farm system and it's paying off at AA and single A so far, I think that there have been some moves where it felt like the Orioles opted not to sign somebody or not bring somebody back that deliberately made the team worse and less watchable at no real benefit. Like, it's one thing to not sign a guy to a 5-year deal because why the hell would you do that and lock yourself into a big-ass contract? But there were guys that they could have signed at relatively cheap rates and still been better than what they have now. So I think that there is some legitimate grumbling going on about that. But that's the extent of it. There certainly shouldn't be any, we got to fire these guys because they didn't go out of their way to make the team a 72-win team instead of a 55-win team or something like that. They're doing the most important thing that they were hired to do, was bring these guys in and make the team a more structured, sound organization. And while it hasn't quite risen to success at the major league level, all signs indicate that that's on the horizon. It might not happen next year, might not even happen in 2022, but we have...
Next year is 2022.
You're right, I'm sorry. 2020, just such a blur of a year. But it might take another couple of years, but I think that this is probably the low point for the rebuild. I assume that next year's team will look better. It won't be a playoff team, but you'll start seeing some of these young guys get called up to the show. I don't think you're going to see Adley Rutschman playing minor league baseball in 2022. If he is, it's not going to be for very long. Same thing with Grayson Rodriguez. I think you're going to see these guys start to come up, and some of that frustration is going to ebb away. But like I said, I do think that there is some legitimate criticism to be made about the fact that it seems like they just decided not to make moves at the major league level for the purposes of saving Peter Angelos some money, and that's always going to stick in a fan's craw, and I think it's okay. I just don't think that the entire meltdown is necessary. I think that's just more of the fact that we're tired of sucking, and being a bad baseball team is no fun. But this is the nature of the league. You got to go through it sometimes when, like you said, Evan, people in the past have consistently screwed the pooch and did not leave your organization in any position to maintain a long-term competitive window. You got to do this. So
I think Chance Sisco is going to start 162 games for the Orioles next year.
Well, that'd be hard to do.
Well, he's on the Mets now.
Yeah,
so.
he's not.
Oh, is he now?
Yeah. I mentioned this in the chat.
I didn't think anybody was going to actually pick him up.
Yeah, I'd surprised. Like the guy next to us at the game made a joke when the field crew was working on the field after the game, and they were tamping down the batter's box, and somebody said, "Hey, look, it's Chance Sisco." And I'm like, my goodness, that's cold. And then I looked at my phone and I saw I got picked up by the Mets, and I was like, okay, Mets, have fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so wishing Chance Sisco the best, obviously, but he wasn't good. So there's a lot of other guys on this team that haven't been good either. A guy who wasn't good and I was ready to run out of town about a month and a half ago is Freddie Galvis. He has a quad injury, I believe. He could barely limp off
So then he's
the
not
field.
running out of town.
Yeah, there's no need to worry about running him out of town. He's, that's just not going to happen.
Put him in a wheelchair and roll
So
him out of town.
I think the my instinct. I don't have any inside information. I don't know stuff. But my instinct is that he'll be out in an amount of time that'll be measured in months and not weeks or days. So that looked bad. But I mean, yeah, it is what it is, and also keep in mind, say when Adley Rutschman does get called up, he's not going to be the savior. He's going to be one guy and a key piece, hopefully. But he's also going to go through some growing pains as well. Most people don't just show up and start playing Major League Baseball at a high level immediately. Playing baseball is hard, so. It's just going to take some time, and also keep in mind the Orioles haven't sucked for that long. They went to the playoffs in 2016. It was 5 years ago. They're in the postseason.
Yeah, and it's also important to keep in mind that they didn't commit to actually improving the team and rebuilding the team until really 2019. They tried,
Right.
They sent out teams that they foolishly thought could compete in 2017, and then just bafflingly foolishly thought in 2018 that a 45-win team could compete. But so really, again, 2019 was when they said, okay, let's reset this thing. So we are in year 3 of a rebuild,
Right.
and Major League Baseball
Really year 2, because there was no year last year.
Yeah,
at the minor league level.
And so it's Major League Baseball is unkind to bad teams. This is not a sport where the nature of the game just offers you a quick fix. It's not like football where you can just go get, Trevor Lawrence or Patrick Mahomes or a quarterback,
Peyton Manning,
and suddenly you go from worst to first in a matter of a couple of years. It's not even the NBA where if you draft well, you can build a competent team. Yeah, there's no one player fix here, and you can't buy your way out of it if you're a team like the Orioles who doesn't spend a whole lot of money.
Yeah, and it's not even like a team rebuild either. It was a complete organizational rebuild. Everybody from the owner down was fired after 2018, or their contract wasn't renewed or whatever. So it's just going to take some time, and we have to be patient. And just attempt to see the positive in some of this stuff, right? There's a lot of. Despite the Orioles being so terrible, Cedric Mullins has been a really good player this year. John Means was really good. He threw a no-hitter, the first Orioles no-hitter in how long? Since 1992 or something like that.
Trey Mancini's been good.
Trey Mancini's coming back from colon cancer and is having a good season. Ryan Mountcastle's made some improvements. He stunk the first month of the year. He had no idea what he was doing. He couldn't play the field or hit. He's suddenly developed plate discipline. He walked this weekend. He never walks.
That's true.
Yeah. It just appeared out of thin air. He's like, oh, I'm low and away slider. I'm going to not swing at that. Suddenly. He had a home run the other day. I think Saturday or yesterday. So, it's a process. They're also building that facility in the Dominican Republic.
That's true.
That all the other teams have, except the Orioles. A baseball academy. So I think that's supposed to be ready about a year from now. You can't just wave a magic wand and expect it all to be fixed, because there were just so many issues. At every level. Oh boy. So, from one team that sucks to another, Corey, the Yankees, what is the deal?
Before we get to the Yankees, just real quick, I want to make a mention. I just saw an ESPN alert that the Angels are officially putting Mike Trout on the 60-day IL. So he's going to be out until after the All-Star break, at the very least. So, just that much more opportunity for Cedric Mullins to be in the All-Star game for you guys.
Should be.
Well, I mean, the All-Star break is 2 weeks away.
Well, yeah.
So, it's not that much.
Um,
that long.
So on to my Yankees.
We were only 1 spot ahead of the Orioles in the standings in the AL East.
A lot of games ahead, but
and that's been the case in a lot of our weeks. I mean, last week was a nice reprieve, and when we met a week ago, we were in 3rd place in the East because we had swept the Blue Jays and leapfrogged them, and then this past week happened. So the week started off okay, and I half expected it to, but I also was not going to be surprised if we just got swept by the Royals. We managed to win 2 of those 3 games, and so I'm like, okay, we're actually kind of keeping it going, and granted, it's the Royals. We're supposed to beat them, but at least we're doing what we're supposed to do. But then we went up to Boston and, just did the exact same thing we did at the beginning of the month when we hosted the Red Sox and got our asses swept. And it was even worse this time because at least last time we only had an 8-run deficit over the 3 days. This time it was an 11-run deficit. So the series opener on Friday was played in front of the first full capacity Fenway crowd of the season. Gio Urshela had an opportunity to tie the game at 4 runs apiece, but was gunned down by Hunter Renfroe from right field. StatCast measured the ball at 94.7 miles per hour out of his hand.
Hand cannon.
Ooh.
Like, holy cow. I think he actually overthrew home plate. The catcher had to step back to get it and was still able to lunge forward and tag Urshela out as he was coming home from second. So we ended up losing that game 5-3. The second game of the series saw the Red Sox get their 4 runs via 3 sac flies and an infield hit. And that was one of 5 total infield hits that they got on the day because the Yankees just couldn't do anything right defensively. And one of those 3 sac flies that they got was only hit 152 feet from the plate. Luke Voit caught it in foul territory with his back to the plate, and it was just there's no way that Rafael Devers, who is really fast, by the way, is going to tag up and try and get home on this with my back turned. So he catches it, kind of does a half-moon jog around, notices he's running home. He's like, oh, I better flip this to the plate, but way late.
Is it possible he forgot how many outs there were?
Even if that's possible, it's not an excuse.
Well, it's a worse excuse, yeah.
That's almost worse than just assuming he's not going to run on a ball 150 feet from the home.
Because I'm just remembering a play from I was playing a game one time and this kid caught a ball in left field and he casually caught it and just started doing a banana route where he ran out towards the left field foul pole and started looping it, and we're all yelling, "Throw the ball in! The guy's tagging up from second. He's gonna score!" It's because he was trotting for 3 seconds before he realized, by the way, buddy, that wasn't the 3rd out.
Jeez. Yeah. And then I don't even really want to talk much about Sunday's fiasco. We lost 9-2. Garrett Cole gave up 5 earned runs in 5 innings. Our only 2 home runs came on what was essentially a fur by Aaron Judge in the 6th with LeMahieu on base. We're 0-6 now against the Red Sox this season, so
only 13 more to go against Boston.
Right, we're not going to sweep them in those, so we'd be lucky to get back to 500 against them. So with the trade deadline about a month away now, Brian Cashman, the Yankees general manager, says that the team they're buyers during this month, but says that there doesn't seem to be much momentum, which I take to mean that they've called all the other teams and talked to them, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of interest from other teams on moving pieces around, which would suggest that maybe this is going to be a quieter trade season even than normal. But
what do the Yankees have to offer?
That's the question. Supposedly they're looking for a center fielder and a starting pitcher, which makes sense because Aaron Hicks is out for the season now, and Luis Severino's return has been.
What else? What always happens to Aaron Hicks? He got hurt.
He's always hurt. I
When did he
don't
get
even
unhurt
keep
and
track
hurt?
of what the injury is anymore with him because it could
always
be
something.
anything, and it's always
It's always
And then
He's-
Luis Severino's return has been pushed back for a month to a month and a half because of right groin strain in his rehab start. So it makes total sense that we're looking for a center fielder and a starting pitcher, but what do we have to give up? We're not like, if we give up anybody from our major league roster, then picking up those pieces doesn't really move the needle, and we've got nothing in our farm system.
Oh, by the way,
Nothing.
Shohei Ohtani hit a bomb against the
Another
Yankees.
one?
Yeah.
Of course he did.
Oh,
So yeah,
jeez.
it's 1-0.
I already knew that. I think Jared Walsh drove in Anthony Rendon for a run as well.
Oh
So
my goodness.
that's at least 2 runs that the Yankees given up already tonight.
Yikes.
But yeah, so that's kind of where the Yankees are at right now. It's not good.
The Yankees are down 2-1 to the Angels right now.
No,
They got a runner on
so
second
exactly
and
2
one out,
runs
so-
given up. That's not terrible, I guess.
The Yankees are 5.5 back in the wild card. They need to catch the A's with this, to get a playoff spot.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's always like, the thing is, like, it's one thing to be 5.5 back of one team, but if there's 4 or 5 teams between you and that team, you need all of those teams
To also,
yeah.
not catch
Yeah.
them.
Well, that's what makes it so dicey. It's like, if it's one team, you can hope that they go on a cold streak, but if it's 5 of them, you got to hope none of them get hot. Which,
Yeah.
with 5 teams, it's unlikely that none of them get hot. So, like, the Yankees are in a position where they've just got to be better. And again, we're halfway through the season at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Is there realistic? Is it possible that they're going to get better? I don't know at this point. I mean, it's just, it feels like, honestly, if they go into the deadline and they're still floating where they are around 4 or 5 games above 500, if that, 6 or 7 games back of first place in the division, I don't see how you can justify, quote unquote, buying at that point,
Right.
even if you're the Yankees.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I don't think the Yankees have all that much to offer. So what limited prospects they might have to offer in a win-now trade better yield a playoff spot, and that's no guarantee.
I mean, it sounds like the Yankees are in a similar situation to what the Orioles were in 2015 and 17, where they, at least the Orioles anyway, had convinced themselves that they were playoff contenders when they really weren't. And they traded for Gerardo Parra, who was a colossal disappointment. And they traded for Tim Beckham, who had the greatest month of any baseball player ever.
Yeah, that
For
August
the
was
first month he
incredible.
was an Oriole, and then disappeared for a year and a half after that.
Turned back into Tim Beckham.
Yeah, turned into a pumpkin. So, you got to be careful. This is one of the reasons why the Orioles are in the mess they're in now, because they made a bunch of dumb decisions 5 years ago. In terms of how to manage the roster in the farm system. The Yankees have to leapfrog over the A's, like I said, Cleveland and Toronto. And they're currently tied with some team called the Seattle Mariners.
My Mariners,
So-
apparently.
Yeah. So tied with the Mariners is not where you want to be
Ever.
in terms of the standings to make the playoffs, because the Mariners haven't been to the playoffs
20
in
years.
20 years. Let me get back to our sheet here.
Well, speaking of the
Um,
Mariners,
Yeah, speaking of the
Right.
Mariners,
Oh, right.
and Mariners pitcher Hector Santiago got ejected for having some miscellaneous goo in his glove in a game yesterday.
first player to be ejected since Major League Baseball started really cracking down on this.
Yeah, I mean, having miscellaneous goo has been against the rules for 150 years. You're not supposed to doctor the baseball in any way with any foreign substance.
He says
But-
it was just rosin.
Yeah, he says it was just rosin and he was sweaty and that made it get sticky. But yeah, this is the first player to get ejected for goo. So he has that
That
dishonor,
distinction.
I guess.
So he's like the Rudy Gobert of this situation, where this guy's always going to be known for, you were the first one to get busted. That's nice.
Rudy, nobody's going
This is
to
not
ever compare to Rudy.
This is not going to be
Not going to lead to a
as
shutdown
that.
of all sports and results.
It's not going to end
In
the
5
world.
years, I'll have forgotten who the first person was to get ejected for this. I will still remember Rudy Gobert gave the world COVID.
Hey, prove that he's the defensive player of the year. He shut down the whole world.
Did. I mean, that night when we found out the NBA was going to suspend the season, like that's when the pandemic became the most real. It's like, oh, this is happening. So that was quite something. So Eric, Corey, and Rashonda attended Friday's Baysox game. If I remember correctly, the Baysox got smoked, but did y'all have a good time?
Well,
They were being smoked.
Yes.
So I actually have my score sheet here because I don't know if you saw it, Evan, but I kept score for the entire game. No WWs in my book.
I saw you also kept track of the pitches as well.
Yeah, I kept track of the pitches.
I don't usually do that.
So I don't know all the pitchers' names because it only gives me room to put their number in this book. But yeah, a lot of home runs in that game.
Oh yeah.
And an awful lot of walks, especially the Baysox walking New Hampshire Fisher Cats players. That's who we're playing against. So the Fisher Cats were up 10-0 after the 5th inning. And then the Baysox came roaring back and scored a run in the bottom of the 5th, and then 5 runs in the bottom of the 6th. And then scored another 2 in the bottom of the 9th and actually had the winning run on base and somebody else at the plate with 2 outs. But
hopefully somebody was at the plate.
But the Fisher Cats brought somebody in to get that one final out, and he got it, and that was the game. So after being down 10-0, the final score was 10-8. For a little bit, I was actually considering just stopping keeping score because at 10-0, I was just like, this is dumb. But
brutal, yeah.
I'm glad I did keep keeping score because that ended up being a really enjoyable game.
Yeah.
And then we got to see Adley Rutschman gun somebody down on a attempted stolen base. Saw a lot of home runs. Saw one that went over the scoreboard of Prince George's County Stadium.
Yeah.
Like over it.
Yeah.
We saw one that hit the scoreboard. We saw another one that just moonshot it over it.
Yeah, Corey was sitting there on the one that hit the scoreboard, and the dude just tattoos the ball, and Corey's like, oh, that's in the gap. I'm like, dude, that's not in the gap. That's over the fence.
To be fair,
time.
it was also in the gap.
It was in the gap, and I was like, as soon as he hit that ball, I was like, that's gone. I watched it
in the gap. I mean, there's no players, across the highway or wherever the ball landed.
Yeah, they're in the woods. Yeah, I watched enough DeMatha pitchers, not including myself, by the way, give up a lot of big time home runs, and you can tell off the bat just the trajectory and the speed. I'm like, that's gone. That's way gone.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Then we got to see fireworks after the game, so
yeah, it was good.
And we got
show.
free tacos because the Baysox scored enough runs.
Or the rule was, I think, if they scored like 4 runs in the 6th, there's just some goofy thing,
something like that. And they
whatever.
scored 5 in the 6th. So
They
gave
us a free coupon
yeah,
for
we got
a taco.
vouchers for tacos.
It was excellent.
So Rashonda doesn't
Did
eat
you get
Taco
the
Bell,
taco?
so I got 2 tacos that
Have
night.
you got your taco?
Oh yeah, I got both of them that night.
Cool, I got mine that night too.
Yeah.
Alrighty, that sounds like a successful trip to the ballpark.
It was also it was also half Christmas, so all that was going on.
Yeah, they had Santa there and Christmas music during the whole thing,
Which was just so weird.
You would have loved, Evan. Eric and I
would
not
have loved
so much.
it. Yes,
I
would have
enjoyed.
been beaming
I
from
enjoyed
ear to ear.
I enjoyed just how out of place hearing Sleigh Ride as the fireworks were going boom, boom, boom in the middle of a 80-degree night in late June. And then when the fireworks take a little reprieve from blowing up, you just hear din 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 din. I'm like, what is going on?
We also got to see the hype man take off his shoe, one shoe and one sock, and walk around half barefoot on the top of the Baysox dugout because they use a rally sock.
That dude is so corny. He is so corny.
Welcome to minor league baseball,
Yes.
where it's just like that.
It's just silliness nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy who drove to Huntsville, Alabama to try to see the Rocket City Trash Pandas, and they got rained out. So,
I mean, hey,
stuff.
minor league baseball games are fun time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not
Yes.
gonna knock it. It's just there's
That's
some
the
goofy
point.
stuff going on, but that's part of the charm of minor league baseball.
Yeah, I mean they got a moon bounce over there in the corner. I mean,
They got rid of the Titanic one though.
the big wooden ship.
I was like
thing
walking
they had.
over there. Obviously, I'm too big to get in it anyway,
You would
but I
look
wanted to.
ridiculous.
I was hoping it was still there.
It looked like Billy Madison being on that playground.
Aren't you like 6
Steve
foot
Martin.
two anyway?
Yeah, exactly. How do you do,
Like
my
you're really
fellow
tall
kids?
for an adult.
Oh my god.
So yeah, no, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Okay. Yeah, glad you had a good time. I like keeping score at games just because I go to a lot of games by myself, and I feel kind of weird just sitting there. So like I got to bring my scorecard and I fill it all out, and it's a great time. So y'all ready to move on from baseball?
Yeah.
Alrighty. In our other topics section, 99% of WNBA players are vaccinated, and every team has met their thresholds to be considered fully vaccinated. So, once again, shout out to the WNBA for doing everything right and how you're supposed to do it, being leaders in every community, and frankly, not getting enough credit for it. All the men's leagues are trailing behind the WNBA in their vaccination rates. Because men are stupid and just fail to do the right thing a lot of the time. I
mean, it's
It's
true.
true.
It's true. You know, I mean, the NFL is doing okay. They say that all 32 of their teams are at or above 90% for their players and staff, which is good. I mean, that's high enough that they should be able to lift restrictions for pretty much every team at this point. There were a couple teams that were lagging behind early in training camp, and it seems like they've rectified that. But then you look at Major League Baseball, and only 23 of 30 teams are at the 85% threshold where they can start loosening restrictions. We talked a little bit about that a week or so ago when I think the Cubs were one of 8 at the time. So I guess one more has joined the ranks of above that threshold. And then I haven't seen an update for the NBA since about 2 months ago in late April when Adam Silver said that 75% of the players were vaccinated. I would imagine that's probably gone up some since then, but I don't know by how much. In any case, I haven't seen anything that suggests that any of the other major professional sports leagues in America are at 99%. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The women aren't fooling around. Good for them.
No,
Yeah, they actually want to play the sport.
And be safe while doing it.
Yeah. So, shout out to the WNBA for being leaders in the community, and doing stuff the right way and taking the pandemic seriously. Let's see. Before we get out of here, we've got some updates on some other sports that don't really get. Oh no, there's NFL stuff to get to too.
Yeah.
Way down at the bottom.
We got plenty of show
We're just
left.
settling in.
We're getting everything out of the way since we're taking next week off. We're giving you
Okay.
guys enough content to last you.
Yes. It's going to take 2 weeks for people to listen to the whole show. So let's just go ahead and just go down the sheet in order. Wimbledon begins. I don't know
Has
when.
begun.
It doesn't say.
Has begun.
Oh, why did it say that on here then? Who wrote this?
I did.
Oh, okay. Wimbledon begins at some point, I guess. So yeah, tell us about the tennis.
Okay, I guess I'll do it because I watched this more than anybody. So Novak Djokovic won his first match. He's the top seed and the prohibitive favorite to win this event. He dropped his opening set against whatever poor soul had to face him in the first round, but he quickly rectified that, unsurprisingly, and took the next 3. So he's through to the second round. More interestingly enough, Hyattsville's own Francis Tiafoe, who I've mentioned on the show before, the number 57th ranked player in the field, upset the 3rd seed Stefanos Tsitsipas in straight sets. Tsitsipas and Tiafoe have kind of come up at the same time. They kind of came on the scene together. Obviously, Tsitsipas has had more success.
Well, if
given
he's
the fact that
ranked
he's the third seed,
compared to, what did you say, 57?
57th for Tiafoe. But Francis had some good stretches in 2019. Again, this is also a situation where the pandemic just leads to upheaval for all kinds of things because I think Tiafoe got as high as 28th almost before last year when things just went to hell. And he's won events. He's gone deep at majors. He went toe-to-toe with Rafa Nadal at the Australian Open a couple years back. He's shown a lot of promise. So, like, when I saw that he beat Tsitsipas in straight sets, I was like, huh. I wasn't, like, stunned by that. I was like, okay, that's something that he can do.
Yeah.
Because, he took Roger Federer to 5 sets at the U.S. Open a few years back when he was only 20 years old. He's a really talented guy, and I'm glad to see that he's been able to stick around because, again, the 57th ranked player drawing a top 3 seed, that's a tough draw. I mean, that can happen, but he could have easily been matched up against the 20th ranked player and, whatever. Because the way it works is the top 32 seeds are seeded. The rest of the field is just dumped in there. So it's theoretically the number 1 player in the world could play the 33rd ranked player in the world in the first round in a field of 128. That can happen.
Interesting.
But, so 57 having to face, like, normally you'd think 57 would play somebody worse than him rank-wise in a field of 128, but nope, he gets to face a top 3 player, and he took him down, so good for him.
Yeah, I know his brother graduated from DeMatha, like, 3-ish years ago, I want to say.
Yeah, I remember reading about that, and I believe our friend of the show, Sean Kennedy, played TFO sometimes at whatever was it? Maybe, was that at PG Sports Complex? I don't know.
No, it's probably in the bubble in College Park.
Yeah, probably. And Sean said, he beat him, but that's also because Sean was like 13 and Francis was 7. Yeah. So,
oh, okay.
But Sean was also pretty good at tennis back in the day.
And just like it's like Drew Brees used to beat Andy Roddick in tennis. Apparently, before Roddick became a man, he was only a boy. And
when did Drew Brees have occasion to play him? And when did a 13-year-old Sean have occasion to play a 7-year-old Tiafoe? Like, what?
I don't know.
It just seems weird to me.
But in the bubble.
Anyway.
Well, because I do know Tiafoe's father, he's an immigrant from Cameroon, I believe, or Sierra Leone. And he got a job as a custodial engineer at the facility, which is why Tiafoe got so interested in playing tennis. Because he was there all the time. He picked up a racket, and now he's a professional ranked tennis player, which is outstanding. So good for him.
I finally picked up a racket this past week, but I don't think I'm going to become a professional.
Might be a little late for you at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
probably just a tad.
And plus, you're just probably not that good. So it's hard.
I'm fast. I'm quick. I can get around, but yeah, my shots are not where I want them to be.
Yeah,
yet.
you probably don't have the thump.
My
the power to
my serve is not very powerful.
Did they radar you?
So I'm not actually taking classes. Rashawn and I just went down to the court in our neighborhood and played against each other.
Okay, and you said that she kicked your ass.
The first time. I beat her the second time.
Did you guys just play one set?
So we played one set Friday night and we played one set Saturday morning.
Okay, cool. Well, good for you guys. I hope you guys keep it up because
it was fun.
People always ask me.
We're definitely going to keep doing it. It was a lot of fun.
Like people always ask me, since I watch tennis a lot, do you play it? I'm like, no, I've never.
If you ever got a racket and you want to play, I'll be down. It was a lot of fun. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I don't really either. I know the rules, but
that's it. I know the rules. That's.
It was fun though. I really enjoyed it. We're definitely going to continue playing.
Oh, well,
probably invest in some lessons to at least
like a good time.
Be competent.
Lessons. Okay.
Yeah. So, and what about Roger Federer?
Well,
Federer.
This is, I guess, just speculation on my point, but if you have any interest in tennis, it might be worth it to check out some of Roger's matches when they come on TV. I know it's going to be tough because they could be at 11 o'clock in the morning. You never know when the hell you're actually going to get a chance to watch him, but this might be his last hurrah at Wimbledon. I mean, he's going to be 40 in August, and he's coming off of 2 knee surgeries. I mean, it's hard to see him continuing to do this very much longer. And this is probably the first time where he's gone to events and he hasn't finished by saying, I'll see you next year. So I don't know if he might not be the type to do a retirement tour, but he also just might not be back next year. So appreciate the greatness while you can. And it would be something else if he could win this tournament, but it's hard to see it given the fact that he's missed so much time and he's coming kind of out of cold storage.
What is SW19?
That is the postal code for the facilities at Wimbledon. It's often shorthand referred to as SW19.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That is me whipping out tennis jargon like the elbow and the stretch 4. for basketball.
Yeah.
I'm also pulling for Serena Williams to do well. It seems like she's kind of going all in on Wimbledon because she's already announced that she's not going to be going to the Olympics to try and get her, what would be a 5th gold medal that she would win there?
I don't know. I don't know
Or
if
at least
it would be
5th medal.
I mean, she's definitely won her share of doubles titles as well, so I don't know how many total. I don't know how many singles titles she's won. I'm sure it's at least 2. It's got to be. But also, just to mention, Roger Federer said he was non-committal whether he was going to compete at the games because, again, he's got to manage his body, given the fact
The
that
Olympic Games.
Yes. Yes. It's like they sometimes are shortened to be called the Games, which is why I called them the Games.
Yeah.
So yeah, go Serena, go Roger, and go Francis TFO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. Also, across the pond, the Tour de France begins again. What in the world?
Give me a...
Seemed like the English teacher on our show would know which verb tense to use when stuff happened already. But anyway,
he got his math question right earlier today, so give him a break.
That you did get the math question right. Yeah, so making improvements, I guess. There's a gigantic pileup in the Tour de France. Just what?
So
break it down.
All right,
for
so
us.
let's go ahead and talk about the first 3 days of the Tour de France. So a lot of people are aware of at least one moment from day 1 of the Tour de France because it was trending all over social media. It was on Twitter. Eric actually saw it before I did. So I did not really get a chance to keep up with the first 2 days. I spent today watching extended highlights of the first 2 days of the Tour de France and then watching most of today's stage of the Tour de France. So stage 1 was on Saturday. It was about 126.5 miles on a hilly route.
Oh, goodness.
And there were 2 pretty major crashes. So the first one was at around 28 miles to go, and that's the one that you all saw. That's the one that was caused by the fan, had a sign that was like extended even further out into the field, and I believe it was Tony Martin who crashed into her arm, slashed the sign, went down. You could kind of see the fan, like she was like, oh, like spun around, and supposedly didn't even stay long enough to really see the carnage of her action. She just fled, and she's still at large. The Tour de France organizers are still looking for her, trying to identify her. Supposedly they have plans to sue her, which I am all for because
Yes.
I've been saying, I and anybody else who I talk to about the Tour de France over the past several years, we've all been very frustrated with some of the fan behavior at the Tour. Like, so many of the fans are out there just having a good time, and they're there to watch the racers and to support them, and that's great. But then you have the ones who crowd the road, especially on the hills, and you can make the argument that it's more acceptable on the hills because it's harder to go up them, and so the bikers tend to spread out a little bit more, and they tend to be closer to single file, and so the fans can kind of come up onto the road, but they will like lean into the bikers' faces. Some of them will like run alongside them, and it drives me nuts every single year when I see that. And then for this fan to just have absolutely no spatial awareness, she's stepping into the road. This is in a part of the course where the entire peloton is jam-packed together. There may have been like 6 leaders who were out in front, and then all the rest of the racers are all together. So they're taking up the whole damn road. And she's stepping out into it, and then she's got a sign that's going even further into the road. What are you doing? So that all happened. But then there was an even nastier crash a little more than 20 miles later, just under 7 miles to go. That took Chris Froome out of contention. He's a 4-time champion. He lost 14 minutes on that stage, so he's done. Now, he wasn't really racing to try and win the general classification anyway, But still, it's just a shame to see him go down like that in the first day of the race. I mean, he's kind of a fan favorite. He's one of my favorite racers I've gotten a chance to watch since I've become a fan of bike racing. Cost a lot of other favorites significant time in that pileup. One of the few contenders that I'm familiar with being among the leaders who didn't seem to be caught up in that was Nairo Quintana, who he's been supposed to win the Tour de France for darn near a decade now, and always ends up falling apart late in the race. But he's only 40 seconds back right now after 3 stages, so I guess good for him. We'll see if he can stay in that conversation. But Julien Alaphilippe of France won stage 1. He took off from the field with about 2 kilometers to go to the finish up a climb. It was the final of 6 climbs for the day, and just absolutely blew them out of the water. Stage 2 was much cleaner on Sunday morning. They raced a little over 117 miles. There were some pretty fun sprints on the climbs. There were 6 climbs, just like day 1, but all of them were like category 3 and 4, so they're like the lowest grade mountains. You have like category 2 is higher than category 1, and they have like the HC, which is the highest category. So you got 5 different categories, and these are all small we had one guy who just took off and held on to the lead until the top of the 4th climb, about 11 miles to the finish before the peloton ate him up. And then with about 10.5 miles to go, Mathieu van der Poel, is a Dutchman, he took off, made it up the Muur de Bretagne ahead of everyone, then let the peloton take him back in. They looped around for a second ascent of the Bretagne, and then Van der Poel took off again with a little bit less than a kilometer to go and held on to win the stage. And I don't know how he managed to have the energy after taking off the way he did up that climb the first time to then do it again, less than 10. I'm doing that math wrong because I have miles and then kilometers, but not that long later. So with the time bonuses, he also wiped away his 18-second deficit for the day and wound up taking the yellow jersey from Alaphilippe going into stage 3. He's not going to hold on to the yellow jersey. In fact, he didn't hold on to it, but he wasn't going to hold on it to very long regardless. But moving on to this morning, another 117-mile course. Pouring rain early in the stage. That likely played into an early crash that took down Geraint Thomas, who won the Tour de France back in 2018. The doctors actually had to reset his separated shoulder on site, and then he got back on his bike, and some of his teammates came back to help him get back into the peloton, and 30 minutes or so later, he was actually up near the front of the peloton. I was like, dude, this dude is a badass, and which doesn't really surprise me because Geraint Thomas is used to crashing. He crashes almost every year in the Tour.
Used to crashing?
Oh, yeah.
What does it mean to be used to crashing?
He crashes all the time. 2018 was an aberration for him. He had to not crash to win that. And I think he may have still crashed at one point in that race. But I still remember I think it was Chris Froome's, it was either Chris Froome's 2nd or 3rd of his 4 titles. He and Geraint Thomas were on the same team. And there was one point where Geraint Thomas just flew off of the road and down the steep embankment into the trees. And you could see him climb back out, just all muddy, his jersey tattered. They were going at a pretty high rate of speed too. It was not a pleasant sight. But yeah, so yes, he's used to that, and he's used to being a badass, tough guy getting back on the bike.
Okay.
Ide Schelling. Or Ide Schelling, I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name, but he's a Dutch cyclist. He's in his first career tour, and he took control of the polka dot jersey, which is for the King of the Mountains, the guy who earns the most points at the tops of mountains. So each mountain, based on the category, has a different point allocation. And for tougher mountains, for the category 4, just the first person over gets 1 point. That's it. It's not really worth a whole lot. When you get to the HC, the first person at the top gets 50 points, and the second person gets 20 or 30 points. So they'll add up more later in the tour. But he took control of the polka dot jersey in his first career tour, which is really cool. It's always fun to be able to wear that jersey, even if it's only for a couple days. He's also been in the breakaway group in each of the tour's first 3 stages, which is a really impressive effort for the young guy. Then we had a pretty clean race into the last 7 miles. So our second crash of the day was about 7 miles remaining in the race. That crash split the peloton just as the pace was picking up over the 30-mile-per-hour mark. The third crash, about a mile later, took down Primož Roglic, who placed second last year in the Tour de France. He lost a lot of time. 3 riders from the breakaway then made it inside of 4 miles to the finish before being caught. Their capture actually looked imminent at around the 5-mile mark, but they pulled away again before being caught at the 3.3-mile mark. A fourth crash occurred with around 2.5 miles to go, coming around a turn. And then a fifth crash took down Peter Sagan, who's from Slovakia. He is the 7-time points winner, the guy who wears the green jersey at the Tour de France. And that was about 100 meters from the line. It was almost a mile of just straight road coming to the finish, but then there was like one small place where there's a bit of a dip, a turn. And Caleb Ewan he's an Australian biker. He was being a little too aggressive, I think, on that final sprint. He touched wheels with Tim Merlin and wound up taking down Sagan. Sagan was able to finish. He'll continue. Caleb Ewan broke his collarbone, so he's done. Tim Merlin managed to stay upright and ended up winning the race. He's racing in his first Tour de France, and he's won a stage now, so good for him. In all, 7 bikers have now abandoned the Tour through stage 3. Besides Caleb Ewan, the most significant of them would be Robert Gesink, who abandoned today due to the crash that took down Geraint Thomas early. He basically did a somersault. He crashed right into Geraint Thomas and did a somersault over him and over his handlebars. He finished 4th in the 2010 Tour de France and 6th in 2015. So he's never won, but he's had some pretty high finishes. So him crashing out is a shame. Looking ahead in the Tour, there's an individual time trial coming on Wednesday. The first of 2 rest days will be next Monday. The first mountain stage is this Saturday, which is the day after the longest stage of the Tour, which is a 159-mile trek through a hilly stage. But if anybody gets a chance to tune in on Saturday morning for that mountain stage, the mountain stages are appointment television. The bikers are moving a little bit more slowly, and so in some ways you might think, it's not going to be as exciting. It's even more exciting than the sprint stages to me. It's so much fun just seeing the effort that these guys have to do going up the mountains. You will often see on those stages the breakaway will actually get 10, maybe even 15 minutes out in front of the peloton, and then you just start seeing the peloton gear up and start chasing them down, and it is so much fun to watch. And every so often, you see a breakaway survive all the way to the finish and somebody win it over the peloton. It doesn't happen very often.
Okay.
So a quick interrupt. Dylan Bundy had to leave the game against the Yankees because he was throwing up on the field. So, yeah.
Oh.
Jeez.
Yeah. So that happened.
Righty. I guess with that, we'll move on to from cycling to, I believe that's Olympic track, Olympic trial track.
Well, so the Olympic trials are happening for a lot of sports right now, including gymnastics, which I need to check out some of like Simone Biles highlights because she is amazing. I just haven't gotten a chance to get to that. So yeah, track is the main thing to talk about here. So the U.S. track and field Olympic trials began, I believe actually last Sunday. So they just wrapped up. And there are a lot of great performances. I won't go through all of it, but Sydney McLaughlin set a new world record in the 400-meter hurdles, became the first woman to break 52 seconds in the event. She was actually racing against the former world record holder. That was a really cool race. On a side note, one athlete who just missed out on making the finals in that event, I actually know pretty well. So one of my best friends, Ashley Seymour, her younger sister Kia was racing at the Olympic trials for the 400-meter hurdles, and she finished 5th in her heat of the semifinals and missed making the finals by less than 0.2 of a second. So I know she was disappointed about that. She's put a whole lot of work into the hurdles ever since she turned pro. Maybe 3-ish years ago, I believe, is when she went pro. But she came very close, and hopefully a lot more success in her future. But she put together a really good performance in that race. Allison Felix has made her 5th Olympics in the 400 meters. She did it running out of lane 8. Now, it was a 9-lane track, but still, she's pretty much on the outside. That's not really easy to do because you can't see where anybody else is. They can catch up to you and just kind of leave you in the dust. And in fact, that's pretty much what happened. She was in 5th place coming out of the final turn and then came back to finish 2nd. Top 3 make it to the Olympics. So that was a great performance. And then Noah Lyles ran 1974 in the 200, which is the fastest time, I believe, in the world this year. And then Arian Knighton, he finished 3rd. And so he makes it to the Olympics in the 200. And he is now the youngest American track and field Olympian since 1964's Olympics in Tokyo, and the first high schooler to make the Olympics in men's track and field since 1972.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very well, good for all of them. I don't have anything else to add. Forgive me if I missed the track and field. You didn't cover any field in there, just track.
I didn't pay as close attention to the field events, to be honest.
Okay.
But, I mean, the Olympics are coming up, within the next month, so it's good to
July
to
23rd.
know. Yeah, it's good to know a few of the people who are going to represent your country. I mean, we've talked about, some other topics related to the Olympics on this show over the past few weeks, primarily, Japanese media's opposition to the Olympics being held. There's also, of course, the fact that Japan doesn't really have a say in it. Japan can't choose not to hold it. It's the IOC literally can. Well, the IOC can force them. That's how it is for anything. The IOC makes the decision. Japan can't pull out. That's the way the contracts work.
Yeah, so that's unpleasant. All right, so on to the NFL before we get out of here. Apparently, cities can bid to host future NFL combines. Why? This seems like such a non-event.
I would
to me.
imagine it's probably a money grab, to be honest.
But people don't attend
Who
the
makes
combines,
money from
do they?
this?
Yeah,
Who's
the
watching
NFL. The NFL makes money from the cities because the whole thing is like Indianapolis always hosts it, so now other cities can say, "Oh, we want to host the NFL Combine." So
but what's
Why?
in it for the city?
Well, I guess the what could potentially be in it for the city is that you're going to have all these athletes and coaches and scouts who are going to be in your city, and so they're going to patronize your local restaurants and malls and whatnot.
Seems like a waste of time.
I agree. Just like why?
Yeah.
Like the combine is televised for some reason. It's like watching golf on TV. It's just people talking quietly and a bunch of nothing.
I'll watch the combine. The combine is actually kind of cool. Golf can.
The NFL Combine sucks, man. It's boring. It's just a bunch of people running around and catching footballs with no defense.
It's better than golf.
Yeah. No
Yeah,
defense
to me-
and no
to me-
pants.
To me,
Take
no
a hard-
offense to the
pants
golf
either.
fans
Take a
out
hard
there.
disagree on that one. I'd rather watch a competitive golf tournament than the NFL Combine.
I can't watch golf. It's just I can't watch golf.
Yeah, it's like horse tranquilizer or something. Also, in the NFL, teams are allowed an additional helmet beginning in 2022. This isn't saying that all the players share one helmet, but you're allowed to have a different helmet design in addition to the one you already have. Doesn't do anything for me.
Well, it's cool because
I don't
now
particularly
teams can actually have throwback uniforms with their throwback helmets. So the Patriots could actually have old what was his name? What was the name of the mascot? It was like
Man, I forget.
Patriot Bill or
guy snapping the ball.
yeah, the guy snapping the ball. It's
Yeah,
like,
I forget what his name is.
yeah, I don't remember. You can have like the creamsicle uniforms for the Bucks with the flag
And the
logo
awesome pirate
on there. Yeah, you can if anybody actually has rights to the old Texans uniforms, whether it's the old Oilers uniforms, I would imagine it'd be the Titans who have those rights. They could wear those uniforms, so like that's an option. You could also have a slightly different design for your alternate uniforms. That's another way you could go with this. It seemed like a weird, like, to me, it's like, why couldn't they do this before? But at the same time, I have to wonder, is it because it's so difficult to acquire helmets for some reason? I mean, we remember like Antonio Brown seemed to be having a lot of difficulty getting a helmet that was actually legal
Antonio
and
Brown
was good
has a
for
lot
him.
of difficulty.
And
with
yes,
a lot
Let's
of
consider
things.
the source.
Yes, it's also Antonio Brown, but there were enough people who were reporting it and backing it up that it seemed like that may have been a legitimate thing that happened.
So the Patriots' old logo of the Minuteman snapping the ball was Pat Patriot.
Pat Patriot, okay.
And their mascot currently called Pat Patriot too.
Maybe. I don't know.
know.
I don't know mascots' names in football because
Somebody
mascots aren't really
tackled
that
him
important
in
in
the Pro
football.
Bowl one time.
Yeah, it was. It was Jamal Adams flattened him.
The poor guy in the costume.
Yeah, just absolutely creamed him.
So I mean, I think it's cool that they're allowing it. I don't really understand why they didn't allow it before. I don't know why you can't just like paint the same helmet.
I'm just glad the Red Bills helmet can be back. That thing's dope.
Yeah, no, I like that helmet
Now,
too.
what are the what's the team gonna do? Gonna throw it back to the racism?
I guess you could do something like similar to the old R logo, but put a W inside of the circle instead.
So it's not really a throwback then.
So it's not really a throwback, but like I liked the yellow helmets, so I would go for that.
Yeah, the
Yellow
mustard yellow with
a maroon W inside of it instead.
Can you pick a
That was
name?
burgundy.
Please? Just pick a name.
Yes, burgundy. Thank you.
Please.
But yes, please pick a name.
You said maroon. Jeez.
I did.
Jeez. Got a fan of you. The burgundy and gold. He's out there saying maroon.
Maroon and black and yellow.
It's like that's like saying I'm a Florida State fan. I'm rooting for the burgundy and gold, baby. It's like no, it's the garnet and gold. Get it right.
Everybody gets all worked up over their color too. Ohio State, they were scarlet.
It's scarlet. It's not red.
Yeah, it's not red. Are you kidding me? So think of another team. At least they call their color red.
Yeah,
and
Maryland
not
is
scarlet.
red. Like it's not scarlet. It's not crimson. It's red.
Yes, crimson.
It's red,
That's-
white, black, and gold.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Corey's wearing a Maryland shirt right now. It's very gold.
I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was Tour de France yellow jersey because I don't see below your collar too much. See, now I can't see the top of your head.
Well,
Jeez.
pickle lane, man.
Moving on.
Anyway, Carl Nassib last week, believe right as we got done recording, this news broke.
Yeah.
He posted a video, I believe, on Instagram, coming out as gay. So he's the first active NFL player to come out as gay ever.
Yeah, ever. Because Michael Sam never made an active roster. He was on a couple of practice squads for the Cowboys and one other team. And I think he
played for the Rams in the preseason.
I guess he did play for the Rams in the preseason, but he didn't make their active roster. But yeah,
Nassib is under contract with the Raiders.
Yes.
I got him confused with his brother Ryan Nassib, who played quarterback at Syracuse.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So, and there's been an outpouring of support for him on social media, which is nice to see because that's not always the case. It's not always the reaction that you see. He also announced that he's donating, I believe he said $100,000 to the Trevor Project, I believe is the name of it. It's essentially an organization that helps to fight teenage suicide in the LGBTQ community. And that's really good. The NFL put out a commercial either yesterday or today that said, like, football is gay and lesbian and a bunch of other words, which, I honestly I felt was a little bit corny, but I appreciate the message that they're trying to be inclusive and accepting, which it'd be nice to see them be inclusive and accepting on more issues than just that, but it is good to see them doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a huge deal and good for Carl Nassib. I mean, it's not always an accepting world out there when you're different from other people.
Well, and I think that's kind of what he was alluding to when he told a couple, or at least a few reporters have said that he told them that he is looking forward to the day when that sort of an announcement is not newsworthy, right? Isn't necessary or whatever. And it's kind of funny because there are people in this world who look at something like that and and it's not necessarily people who are not accepting of gay people or trans people. Sometimes it's people who just kind of, they tolerate it, but they look at it and they're like, I don't want it to be in my face, right? Why is this newsworthy? Shouldn't we just, it's not a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. So let's not make it a big deal. But the problem is, until everybody, literally every single person is on the same page on that, looking at it as this is not a big deal, it kind of has to be made a deal in some respect. Because there are so many people in this world who don't have the opportunity, who don't feel comfortable, and unfortunately, rightfully so, to come out and be their authentic self because of the people around them. And so until that time comes, it's important that people with a platform like Carl Nassib, be willing to do this. And it's not his responsibility, but if he chooses to take on that mantle, then he deserves support for doing so. And nobody should be looking at this as, he's out here making a grab for attention or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that says, why does this matter that this guy was the first openly gay man that's active in the NFL, well, it's because he's the first openly gay man. He is sure as hell not the first gay man in the NFL. There's no doubt that through the NFL's ranks there have been probably many gay players that could not feel comfortable being who they are openly because of persecution. When you've spent the better part of human history persecuting a group of people, and to the point where in 2021, for the first time, an active NFL player says that he's gay, the fact that it's taken this long to happen is why it's a big deal. Because it only took this long because people only felt reasonably comfortable saying that they were gay in public recently. And particularly in sports franchises where you've got a bunch of, frankly, toxic masculinity. You've got coaches and front office people and fellow teammates that would look down their nose at somebody who was gay and consider them something negative because of that and would question his value as a teammate, or they make dumbass remarks about it. I mean, it's just, it should be obvious why this is a big deal. But normally the people that say, why does this matter? Why are you making a big deal about this? Are the types of people that would also make those negative remarks about gays. And you see it also happen with women. Why is it a big deal that a woman's getting hired? Aren't they just as good? It's like, well, you were the same guy that was making the joke about her being in the kitchen and making a sandwich last week. So, yes, it actually is a big deal because people like you exist and you get in the way. Yep. Well, this man is not letting you get in his way anymore, and that should be lauded. And hopefully it encourages other people to move in that direction so that we can continue to progress towards an accepting society where people aren't just simply judged based off of things that do not matter to anybody but themselves. Like, these are private issues that if people find out about it, they throw you to the wolves. That shouldn't happen. And until it stops happening entirely, this is going to matter, and this should be spoken on.
Yeah, if you wanted it to stay private and out of your face, then you should have let it stay private.
Well, and then keep your own. Don't bring your wife around, or don't bring your girlfriend around. If you're gonna have the attitude of this has to stay private, well, why doesn't that apply to you? Oh, because you don't like gay people. Yeah. That's what it always boils down to is you do not like gay people. Well, that's a you problem, and we're moving on from people like you.
I mean, well said. I mean, there you go. Tom Brady upset a team he won't name, stuck with someone last
Tom
offseason.
Brady is upset that a team that he won't name stuck with that mother effer last offseason.
I'm very confused about how this was written.
I'll add a little bit of context here.
Please, yes, because there isn't any.
I did not write this, by the way, but Brady went on some show. It's almost like The Shop. I don't think it was actually The Shop, but it was like one of these LeBron James, Rich Paul shows where a bunch of athletes get together and just kind of talk candidly about certain things. And so a teaser trailer showed Brady discussing his free agency before the 2020 season and what his options were. And of course, they clipped the trailer to be as vague and unclear as possible as to what Tom was talking about. And he mentioned one team was interested, but they decided to stick with their current quarterback. And Brady vocalized his disdain for that decision by saying something along the lines of, I might be paraphrasing, "You're sticking with that mother effer," like implying that the quarterback that they stuck with is a clown or a bum, and that Brady would be a significant upgrade, and that the team's screwing up by doing so. But we don't know who he was talking about.
Yeah, Mike Florio, who Pro Football Talk,
yes,
and Colin Cowherd both said that it was Mitchell Trubisky and the Chicago Bears.
I watched that episode of Cowherd, and the thing is, it made sense that it was Trubisky, except for the fact that I honestly can't believe that Tom Brady would go on a public forum and crap on somebody like that.
Yeah,
I feel
he won the MVP for crying out loud.
What I mean by that is, I think that he would, like, if it was somebody like Aaron Rodgers, where it's like, okay, he's clearly joking about, you're sticking with that guy? Like, of course Brady would be joking. I don't think he would actually straight up say, wow, this guy sucks, and I'm going to own him on national television.
Well, and that's kind of the thing that got me about all this is, and since then, by the way, Tom Brady has said he was not talking about Mitchell Trubisky, so all of that conjecture was for nothing, and if anything, all it did was go to show the way that Mike Florio and Colin Cowherd think of Mitchell Trubisky, right? Which is what we think of Mitchell Trubisky. Fair to say Trubisky's not a great player, but I'm not going to call him a mother effer. Like, I'm going to be a little more respectful of Mitchell Trubisky than that. Like, good Lord. Like, you have to be slime, absolute scum of the earth for me to refer to you as a mother effer. So if you're sitting here, trying to say Tom Brady thinks that way of Trubisky, and it turns out that's not the case, then really, that's just you thinking of him that way. And Trubisky, he's not a great quarterback, but he didn't do anything to anybody. As far as I can tell, he seems like a nice enough guy.
Yeah. He's got his charm, too.
I
like Mitch. He's just not very good at being a professional quarterback.
So it just, I just thought it was very clownish that Mike Florio and Colin Cowherd even, I think it's clownish that anybody's trying to guess who it is. Ask Tom Brady. If he doesn't want to say, then
watch the show when it airs.
It's one of the other 31 teams.
And the thing is, again, watch the show when it airs, because this is not something where it's just like, oh, this is just something that we're never going to see. I'm sure that full conversation will be aired in full. I mean, you've seen that with Draymond Green. Draymond Green talks more smack than just about anybody under the sun. They were probably having a great time just talking some smack about people they probably respect. I can't imagine Tom Brady would go on TV and disparage somebody in 100% sincerity like that. He seemed to be having a good time.
Surprised.
Tom Brady's he's a golden boy. He doesn't do stuff like that. He's got an image to protect. The most incendiary thing he ever said about somebody was something that wasn't even in public. He said about Peyton Manning being old. Like in an email where he said he's got 2 years left, I've got 7 or 8. And he was 100% right, because Peyton Manning retired 2 years later as a washed-up quarterback, and Brady's still out here winning Super Bowls. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's the story, Evan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More verb tense issues.
Nothing I ever write in the show notes is meant to be read word for word. They're notes. They're not meant to be the story. You're supposed to see the notes and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to present it.
Yeah. Well, it just confused me. That's all. I had a little trouble interpreting your shorthand note here. That's all. Note that I understand completely. Before we get out of here, Demaryius Thomas has announced his retirement from the NFL. I do want to talk about him, actually. So Demaryius Thomas was a wide receiver at Georgia Tech when I was a student at Georgia Tech. He was incredible to watch. Clearly one of the best wide receivers in Georgia Tech history. Obviously not the best guy, because Calvin Johnson went to Georgia Tech as well. But I posted the clip in our group chat today of Demaryius Thomas's touchdown catch against Clemson in 2009. I was at that game. I had an econ test that day. It was a Thursday, and we couldn't get out of class that day. But anyway, did Demaryius Thomas make the All-Decade team in the 2010s? I remember us discussing whether or not he was on the All-Decade team and trying to figure out who else deserved to be on the All-Decade team.
I'm looking it up right now.
I don't think he was on there.
I didn't think so either, but I'm looking
Antonio
it up.
Brown, Calvin Johnson almost certainly made it. Julio Jones would make it over him, I'm sure.
Okay.
So wide receivers were Antonio Brown, Larry Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson, and Julio Jones.
Okay.
So no DT.
Okay. It's Demaryius Thomas who caught the Tim Tebow touchdown pass in the playoffs in overtime against the Steelers. I believe Demaryius Thomas caught at least one of Peyton Manning's record-breaking touchdown passes.
Yes,
when
he caught the one where they were playing hot potato with it, or playing keep away from Peyton Manning on a staged TV moment, which was just kind of nauseating, but whatever.
Nauseating.
Yeah, it was dumb, man. Like it was clear. Like they tried to make it seem like Manning wasn't in on it. I'm like, everybody knew it was happening. It was cheesy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Demaryius Thomas was also the centerpiece of an iconic trade in our fantasy football league's history.
Mm-hmm.
It started me down a path of a lot of success.
It started Drew down a path of distrusting everybody else in the league.
Can you blame him as well?
He offered me the trade. Like, I did not come to him saying, hey, give me Demaryius Thomas
for a bag of beans,
for Jeremy Maclin and a replacement level tight end I just picked up off the scrap heap.
Jeremy Maclin.
Yeah.
Oh,
Drew was pissed because Thomas had a slow start to the year and they had an early bye. So it was like week 4. Thomas was on bye. He didn't start well. Drew says, hey, can I get Jeremy Maclin and Jared Cook? And this was like St. Louis Rams Jared Cook. I'll give you Demaryius Thomas. I was like, are you serious? Like, yeah, I'll take that trade. And then next week, Demaryius Thomas catches like 3 touchdowns. Pops off for like 35 points or something ridiculous, and Drew's just pissed. I'm like, and then he did that for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Like, he became my best player. Like,
yeah.
All you gave up was a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's all that Drew asked for. He asked for a ham sandwich.
Yeah. No mayo or anything.
Couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I was like, okay.
Yeah. In case Drew's listening to this and wondering why he got picked in the division draft.
Yeah, with some interesting back and forth. But anyway.
So, we've been on here long enough. So before we get out of here, do y'all have anything else to add? Have there been any Woj bombs?
No Woj bombs as far as I know. I've got one shout out to Daryl Morcell, former now Maryland Terrapin, who has decided to transfer to Marquette for his super senior year, if you will, as you guys are aware. And people out there probably know seniors got a waiver for COVID-19 to come back for an additional season due to the situation this season plaguing this college basketball season with no crowds and stuff like that. So Morcell has decided to take that option to transfer after 4 years at Maryland to Marquette. So we wish him nothing but the best. He's probably my favorite Terp under Mark Turgeon. So good luck to Daryl, and we wish him the best.
Did he graduate from Maryland?
Yeah, he graduated in 3 years. He was actually working on his master's degree his senior season basketball wise.
Wow, good for him.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't really have any shout outs, so I'll just shout us out for 150 episodes. Here's to another 150. It's been fun.
Oh, yeah.
Let's keep it rolling.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great doing the podcast with you guys. I wish my computer would cooperate a little bit more often than it does, but it's trying, I guess. There's a whole lot of stuff in here. I don't have anything else to add, so let's just move to the outro then. So remind everybody, we'll be off next week. Not because of laziness or going on vacation or anything. We've done the podcast from vacation multiple times. So, that's not an issue. But just having some scheduling issues. So we'll just push to Monday, July 12th. That is Home Run Derby night as well.
So we'll have that on while we're podcasting.
I mean, it doesn't start till 8 o'clock, so...
Well, hopefully we'll be done by that time.
Yeah, we should be done.
Who knows? We'll have 2 weeks worth of stuff to talk about.
Hopefully there won't be 4 coaching hires to discuss in the NBA.
Yeah. Hopefully there's no cataclysms or anything like that. Let's see. Before we get out of here, I want to remind everybody you can send us an email, thesportsballers@gmail.com. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, if you have any feedback for us, any questions, concerns, or snide remarks, feel free to reach out and send us an email. You can also follow us on Twitter and tweet at us at SportsBallers18. Follow us individually on Twitter. Corey is at Corey Puffett. Eric is at Quagmire67. And I am at Evan_Ash13. You can find this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. In addition, it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. If you want to hear this podcast, but it's not on your podcatcher of choice, please reach out to us and let us know on Twitter or email. You can also like our Facebook page. We are streaming live literally right now on Facebook.
Unless you're listening to us later.
Yeah, unless you're listening to us when we're not streaming, in which case I'm sure the videos on Facebook and Corey, you upload them to YouTube as well.
Mm-hmm. It's not much of a video. It's just our logo right now. But when we do video podcasts, then that's on there.
Yeah. When I did Ash backwards, I did that. I put the logo and then the sound underneath it. I did teach myself how to do that. Those are still on YouTube with nobody ever watching them. So, that happened. Is that it? Is that everything? Am I forgetting anything or anybody?
I think that's it.
Shout out to the Orioles who are not losing yet. So, there's that.
Shout out to the Yankees who are not currently losing too. So there's it's 2-2.
Oh my goodness.
I will continue to not watch the score because as soon as I do, we'll give up a grand slam.
No,
grand slam.
Yeah, she got me.
So anyway. What? Anyway. So with that, thank you all so much for listening. If you've made it this far into the podcast, please subscribe. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button so you'll be notified immediately when we post a new episode. Everybody have a happy 4th of July. Please be safe. Don't do anything stupid with fireworks. Please don't set your house on fire.
No Jason
or blow your
Pierre-Paul
fingers
moments.
off or blow your teeth out of your mouth. Don't drink too much. Don't act a fool. Don't be a jerk. Just exercise basic human decency, please. And don't drive drunk either. Yeah, that's a given. So yeah, let's go. What?
Nothing.
Okay. Yeah. So for Corey, who's distracting me, and for Eric, who I can't see, I'm Evan. This has been the Sports Ballers Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.